Live.
Are live. There we go. What is up, fight fans? We are live on MMA Weekly. I think I was muted at the beginning. There is no muting me today. Jim Greishaber, call me Grease, along with my buddy Jeff Cain. This is MMA Weekly's live coverage of UFC 257. No, not the event. It is the roundup show. The day after, the hangover, whatever you want to call it, and we didn't even need alcohol to have a hangover after that incredible event last night. UFC 257, Poirier versus McGregor 2. Our coverage is powered by CBD Emporium, featuring Level Select CBD. Go to cbdemporium.com/Level Select MMA. That's cbdemporium.com/Level Select MMA. Enter the code MMA50, MMA50, and get 50% off your order of Level Select CBD or CBD Emporium products today. Level Select CBD, stay in the fight. And Jeff Cain, that's something that 4 fighters on the main card were unable to do last night, including Conor McGregor and Dan Hooker. An incredible night of fights on Fight Island in Abu Dhabi, and the fallout today is real. We're sitting here trying to sift through the rubble and the wreckage and everything that happened last night, courtesy of 2 guys, Michael Chandler and Dustin Poirier. And you know what? I just have to start the show by saying this, Jeff, and I like your shirt, by the way, man. Jeff was right. Poirier got the win. And Jeff's also right. Khabib's not coming back. It's pretty obvious now when you think about it. But here's the thing I want to say to start the show. To all the so-called people who call yourselves media, to all the so-called people who call yourselves real fans of the sport, to all the so-called people and all the headlines all over God's green earth, let's get this straight right now. Dustin Poirier did not shock the world. Dustin Poirier did not shock Conor McGregor. This is not a huge upset that Dustin Poirier pulled off last night. So, Jeff, I had to start with that because it's driving me up a wall to read all these headlines and hear all these people saying that Dustin Poirier shocked the world. He didn't shock anybody. Poirier is one of the top fighters in the world, and these guys were so evenly matched coming in. To call it a huge upset is literally criminal activity.
Yeah, it was definitely no upset. I think that it was shocking in the way that he did it. You know, I'll say that. I think that, I mean, even though I picked Poirier to win that fight, I didn't pick him to drop Conor McGregor and beat him with strikes. So I think that he shocked people in that regard. But no, that was no upset at all. Poirier was ranked higher than Conor. You know, Poirier was the more active fighter. Conor had more questions heading into that fight than the Diamond. And he has more questions leaving the fight than the Diamond does.
Oh, my goodness. What a night, though, Jeff. I mean, just and watching the press, a lot of thoughts said in the post-fight press conference, but we are just, I mean, I'm exhausted, first of all. It's been a long week of shows, and I want to say thank you because we're about to do it officially, and you're about to be able to see it on the link and on our YouTube page, but from the back end, we already knew the big news. Jeff, guess what, buddy? 2 million views of our show that we did last night. I just want to say that again. 2 million views. So thank you so much to all of you for being there last night. All our fans from all over the world, everyone who tuned in and watched our live stream during the fights last night. Jeff, such a humbling experience, and I'm very grateful to be a part of it. Thank you so much to all the fans who made it possible. 2 million views on our show last night.
And you know what I took from that? First of all, it is a big number, and it is pretty humbling. But we did the Mike Tyson Jones live reaction or live coverage. Conor McGregor is a bigger draw than Mike Tyson. That's crazy.
Yeah, he is. And Mike Tyson had Roy Jones Jr. with him, who's no slouch when it comes to drawing. It's Conor McGregor's a star maker. Look what he did for Khabib. Look what he's done now for Poirier. People who fight Conor McGregor become superstars, and they make a ton of money. It's just like Tiger Woods, and Phil Mickelson could bitch all he wanted, and all those golfers could complain about Tiger. Oh, there's all these media now. There's all these people everywhere. I can't be a grumpy old man. You all made money because of Tiger Woods, just like everyone who fights Conor McGregor. And not only that, Jeff, everyone who fights on the same card, the UFC, everyone who covers it, every media outlet, every business within the vicinity of anywhere Conor McGregor fights when the fans are there, every single entity makes money, which is why it made me laugh. Last year at the press conference for Cowboy, I asked Conor about his economic impact, and people took shots at me in the media going, hey, it's nice to us to just, kiss Conor's ass and talk about how great he is with the money he brings. But that's a huge story, because every time Conor McGregor steps into the octagon, the world stops and watches him. No different last night, but man, what a fight. I mean, Conor McGregor came out guns blazing. He came out with a bunch of big shots landed in round number 1. He took the fight to Dustin Poirier, as he does everyone. And as it turns out, in the end, and if you watch Conor in the press conference, the biggest difference in this fight, it wasn't the grappling, although Poirier did get the one takedown. It was the calf kicks. Conor said the front of his calf was completely obliterated, and he was unable to do anything with it. So Dustin Poirier won that fight by TKO, and he hit some big shots to do it. But what won him the fight were the calf kicks against McGregor, and that's just brilliant. I mean, that team at American Top Team with Mike Brown and Dustin Poirier, that group, he's been around forever. But it just goes to show you, it really is oftentimes about the small things to win big fights.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I thought that would be something Conor would have to be conscious of heading into that fight. Poirier has really good kicks. I thought he has better kicks than Conor. And Conor doesn't check them early in fights, which, it's terrible, because it doesn't take too many of those calf kicks. In fact, during the post-fight press conference, Poirier said after he landed the second one, he knew Conor was hurt. It doesn't take much, but yeah, Poirier is a very well-rounded fighter. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and we saw what he did on his feet. Yeah. The guy's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. I mean, he's an incredibly well-rounded fighter, and what we saw was him use. It's just experience, right? And that's a veteran fighter. He's like, I'm going to low kick, and he did what he needed to do. He wrestled Conor early. Like I said, at the end of the first round, I thought both of them had positives they could take away. Poirier secured a takedown. Conor didn't take damage and got back up to his feet. In the clinch, they both sort of had success. I felt like Conor had the more success. And then Conor landed some big punches, but Poirier absorbed them. So I felt like going back to the corner, they both had positives. And then heading into the second round, calf kicks, man, compromised McGregor's movement, made him a stationary target. Poirier just, did him in after that.
Yeah, and he definitely took some big punishment too. So he doesn't win that fight without a chin. I mean, Conor hit him with probably 3 hard lefts, a big elbow, the same shoulders that really knocked Cowboy Cerrone out in that fight. Poirier ate a couple of those too, so he took a bunch of shots. He did take Conor down. It was just an incredible performance overall by Dustin Poirier. What a veteran, and that's the thing. He didn't shock anyone. He didn't stun anyone. Maybe the way that the fight finished was a little bit of a surprise to people, but anybody really in the know, anybody who follows the sport, and look, everybody wants the clickbait and the headlines. I get it. But at the same time, this was not a shock. He did not stun him. This was not even that big of an upset. And no matter what the odds makers said, Poirier came into this fight feeling very confident. We knew the fight from 7 years ago would have no bearing on this one, but we also knew that Poirier was going to look for different ways to attack Conor McGregor, kind of like Conor did in Diaz too, with those kicks that helped win him that fight. So hats off to Poirier, hats off to Mike Brown. What an incredible performance. Also, while we're on the topic, hats off to Michael Chandler. I mean, what a debut in the UFC for Chandler, and Dana White saying that he's leaning toward Chandler Poirier after the fight. So, you were right, Jeff. They lined him up that way on purpose so that Chandler would be in the co-main against Hooker. Hooker looked like he didn't even show up, literally, and Dana even said such in the post-fight presser. But Michael Chandler's UFC debut could not have gone any better for Michael Chandler, and it could not have gone any better for the UFC, which now loses Khabib Conor too, and they're going to have to scramble to put together fights to make big money for him.
Yeah, I still say that they're going to do Conor Poirier 3. I mean, that's the fight that they're going to do. That's the next fight. But Michael Chandler had a beautiful UFC debut. He couldn't have written it any better. That's what he wanted. What's funny about that fight is while we were watching it and kind of saying what was going on, Chandler was frustrated in that fight. At Hooker moving laterally on the outside, not engaging. Chandler held his arms up. He was frustrated. And then he landed a huge left hand, boom, over. And so he forgot about how frustrated he was the minute before that happened. But yes, he couldn't have written that better. I mean, he just dropped him and finished him. And that's a guy who's highly respected and had a really good performance. But Poirier said some interesting things in the post-fight press conference, and we'll just summarize them as he's not fighting Michael Chandler next, period. He will go sell Louisiana hot sauce and do his charity. He's not fighting Michael Chandler next. And that's what he says.
Interesting, right? I mean, why would you not fight Michael Chandler next to your Poirier? He wants the money fight. He wants McGregor again. He wants a couple million. He wants McGregor again. I mean, that's all. You're right, Jeff. He wants Conor McGregor and only Conor McGregor if Khabib doesn't come back. And we're not closing the door on that. We're not saying it won't happen, but Khabib Poirier 1 would be Khabib Poirier 2 rather would be a lot different than 1. And here's why. The first one, Poirier had been around forever, but he hadn't fought Conor in years, and he hadn't become that huge bankable draw. Now that this fight has done so many buys, Poirier's been in that limelight, same effect as Khabib in the Conor fight. They just become huge global superstars in one night. Now, going into that fight the second time around, that would be a much bigger fight because now both guys are global superstars as a result of fighting Conor McGregor. So I think the bankability of that fight is way bigger than it was the first time around.
Yeah, and I think that for multiple reasons, you can't have Conor McGregor lose to somebody else in the division and think that you're going to get the biggest fight you can make for Conor McGregor right now is the Trilogy fight with Dustin Poirier. And Dana said that in the post-fight press conference. He says, whenever you're 1-1, you always get a trilogy, kind of leaning towards he's going to try to do that fight. I think it's a smart fight. If Conor beats Poirier in the third match, then last night really kind of gets erased from everybody's memory. Conor's the draw, the number one guy in the division, and now all of a sudden the Khabib stuff starts heating back up. If Poirier wins, then he's beat Conor McGregor twice, and it just legitimizes who he is and his championship status, uncrowned champion in that division. Dustin Poirier feels like he's the champion after last night.
Well, yeah, he said that in the octagon right after the fight. And I mean, who's going to argue with him? That maybe that was the title fight, right? In that division. Certainly, if you're going to give Khabib a title when he beats Rage and Al, no disrespect to Rage and Al. I love the guy, but I mean, certainly we've seen these things before. And Michael Chandler, even if he doesn't get that fight against Dustin Poirier, which it looks like he won't, there's still options for him. I'd love to see who wouldn't love Chandler Gaethje. I mean, good Lord, Michael Chandler and Justin Gaethje. To me, that's the fight to make. And I know people are going to talk about Oliveira, but I don't care if Oliveira is the guy on the outside looking in. I don't think he's earned a title shot yet by any stretch, but I also would much rather see the matchup. Michael Chandler versus Justin Gaethje. Both guys were decorated champions in other organizations coming into the UFC. Both guys have done really well in the UFC. Gaethje with his body of work. And think about this with Justin Gaethje. Completely outclassed and overmatched against Khabib and lost that fight for sure. And he would admit that. But he had the Alvarez fight won. And he had the Poirier fight won. I was sitting 10 feet away from the cage for that one. Dustin Poirier was out on his feet briefly against Gaethje, who couldn't get the finish. Credit to Poirier. Again, that chin. I think the Chandler Gaethje. And I think the fight to make is Poirier-McGregor 3. I think it's got to be. I think you're right. And I think that's the next one we're going to see in that division for the belt.
Yeah, with Chandler, Chandler had a beautiful debut. And I don't think Dustin has any, animosity towards Michael Chandler. It's just Dustin Poirier, the road was long, a really long road to get to where he is. And he sees Chandler coming in and kind of getting Dustin Poirier had to take the stairs to get to the top, and he feels like Chandler's getting an elevator ride, and he isn't going to be a part of that. But I think as Poirier gets further away from this win, that'll change a little bit because just because he had a rough route to the top doesn't mean that Chandler automatically has to have a hard route to the top. It's at the end of the day, it's the UFC's decision on when these guys fight and who they fight, and so Poirier's not going to have that much say in it. Plus, Poirier's not going to be in that fight anyway because Conor's going to be – he's already calling Dana. That fight was already talked about last night on Fight Island before anybody ever left the country, right? We already know that Poirier's going to agree to it. Conor wants it, and Dana's writing up the contracts on his way back to Las Vegas.
Well, think about this, too. I mean, everybody talked about last night, us included, how it was a big loss for the UFC because we're not going to see Conor Khabib, too. But maybe we were never going to see that anyway. And maybe this result is the best result because it does set up the trilogy. I mean, think about this. Conor beats Poirier last night, and the Khabib fight doesn't happen. then there's not as big a fight as Conor Poirier, at least in terms of top of the division. Maybe Conor Gaethje, but Poirier had already beaten Gaethje. So maybe this is a blessing in disguise for the UFC to be able to set up the trilogy fight. The winner's the champ. And who knows? Conor beats Poirier in a trilogy and it's a close fight. Maybe they run it back again. Who knows? They have a lot of options, but I really do want to see Chandler fight Gaethje. I feel like Chandler's going to either get Gaethje or Oliveira next. I can't imagine anybody else that they would put him in there with after that destruction of Dan Hooker, who didn't even look like he wanted to fight Chandler. And I haven't seen Hooker like that. That was really, to me, that was very disappointing. It's easy for me to say, but very disappointed in Hooker last night.
Well, he's also the co-main event on a Conor McGregor fight card on, Fight Island, where they're stuck for 2 weeks, not able to do anything. And so I didn't realize until the post-fight press conference, I didn't register, I didn't think about it when Poirier was talking about the conditions there, that he felt like he was sort of in jail for 2 weeks. And he, what do you have to do on Fight Island if you're a fighter except cut weight and think about the fight? And it can kind of drive you a little nuts. So I don't know if that was what it was with Hooker. I kind of felt like Hooker was just trying to stay away from Chandler early. He has a lot of power early, and he was rotating away from the right hand, and he got hit with a huge lip. I agree, though. Dan Hooker usually takes the fight to his opponent. He did not do that last night, and maybe that's a testament to Michael Chandler's skill set and power, or maybe Hooker was just had an off night. You can't be on top every night, and we might have seen that last night out of him. But it was a good win for Michael Chandler. Like now, all of a sudden, he's in the title talks. I mean, one fight, one left hand, and Michael Chandler's not only in the UFC with a highlight reel knockout, he's all of a sudden in title talks.
He's in title talks, and he was before the fight because he was the guy who was going to take the place of either Khabib or Gaethje. So the debut goes great for Chandler. Of course, if he doesn't get a title shot now, then he loses that title shot. So he might have to get another win coming in unranked, quote unquote, but obviously that's going to change. And then, at the top of that division, there are probably more questions than there are answers right now. And we thought we would get more clarity. Conor needs to go back to his old style. His boxing style after the Mayweather fight ruined him. I think he fought in his own style last night, Taco Concha. Don't you think, Jeff? I think that was Conor's old style that he tried to fight with last night. And here's probably zooted. It should be Chandler versus Poirier point blank, and Olives can fight Gaethje. Yeah, we'll see. I like how he's calling him Olives. That's pretty funny. Yeah. And we got the chat filling up. So, Jeff, I want to read a couple of these real quick, if you don't mind. Who takes it, Dustin or Justin rematch? Zane Boss wants to know. Dustin or Justin in the rematch, who you taking?
That's a tough one, man, because I don't think that – I know that Poirier beat Gaethje, but I didn't feel like he was necessarily winning the fight when he did. It was a close back and forth. Both guys took big damage. I think that's a pick'em fight. If they have a rematch, because Gaethje's so dangerous. He's never out of a fight. Even how many times have we seen Gaethje staggered and then knock somebody out? He's never out of a fight. And so
Michael
I don't
Johnson,
know
for example, yeah.
Yeah, it's a pick'em fight in my opinion. Although Poirier did knock him out technically, I still feel like that's a pick'em fight because Gaethje's just so dangerous. But fans have to think about it. The way I look at it, I'm looking at it from what's the UFC going to do, which means I'm looking at it from what's the biggest fight. What's the fight that they can put together to draw the most interest, the most pay-per-view buys, and everything that they want to achieve? And that's Poirier and McGregor 3. That's it. There's no other fight for the UFC to even be trying to make right now. That's the biggest fight in the division with Khabib gone. That's it. That is bigger than probably Khabib. That's bigger than Khabib and Poirier fighting for the title. A trilogy with
a trilogy with what, Jeff?
A trilogy between Poirier and Conor is bigger than if Poirier were to fight Khabib for the title right now.
Yeah, and thanks, Jake Hatton. We appreciate it. Great job on the recap, by the way. Check out our YouTube, MMA Weekly, and you're on our YouTube. But when we're done with this show, check out our recaps from last night. That's Jake Hatton with a great job there. And, Jeff, I wanted to say, too, when you're talking about here's the card. Here, I got it. Okay, the next major event in the 55 division. How about this? How about main event, Poirier McGregor 3, co-main Chandler Gaethje? Boom.
100%.
You're welcome, Dana. You're welcome, Sean. You're welcome, Mick. Done.
That's it. That's what you do. That's what you do. And I love the Chandler Gaethje matchup. First of all, because both of them have knockout power and one punch walk-off knockout power. But Gaethje's leg kicks with Chandler's wrestling, not to mention Gaethje's not a terrible wrestler to begin with, but that fight all of a sudden takes a different dynamic. Can Gaethje let those leg kicks fly with Chandler's wrestling ability? Is Chandler going to be able to deal with Gaethje's pressure? That's a beautiful fight, and that's exactly the fight card I'd make right now. Exactly the fight card I'd make, and then I would put Oliveira on there with somebody else.
Tony Ferguson against RDA could be another one for that. All right, Jeff, I want to get through some of these comments, so give me a second here. I want to read through some of these, and I want to get your response to these, but I'm getting Conor used to be way lighter on his feet. He just stands in a boxing stance now and barely moves. I think a lot of that has to be, credited to the calf kicks from Poirier, and Conor talked about that after the fight. Conor needs to retire. He's becoming Anderson Silva or Jose Aldo, and Aldo actually made a nice comeback for himself and ended up deservedly or not, in a title fight in his new weight class. So they're saying Conor's almost stuck in the mud, and then someone's saying we're such Conor homers. That's not true. Jeff is not. 2 days ago, Jeff, everyone's calling you a Conor hater. Now they're calling us Conor homers. But literally, and then one other thing I want to get, and we'll respond to all these at once, is that someone in the chat said Conor Diaz 3 would be bigger than Conor Poirier 3. Maybe. Yes, maybe. But, and Conor Masvidal will be pretty damn big too now that I think about it. But here's the thing. You can do, and we've said this before, Jeff, you can do Conor Diaz anytime, and it'll be just as big because it won't have title ramifications. Conor Poirier, you'd have to do it sooner.
Exactly. Conor Poirier, you got to run back now to get the biggest pop out of it. And look, as far as being a Conor homer, I could care less if Conor wins or loses or what. Conor's a name. He's the biggest star in the sport, but his name could be Chad Smith, man. It doesn't matter to me. He could be from another country. It doesn't matter. The point is, this guy from Ireland is the biggest superstar in the sport, and the UFC is going to want to put him in there with the most meaningful fight they can do to draw interest with the public. And that's against Dustin Poirier that he just lost. So that's the route the UFC is going to take. Period. We can talk about who deserves it and who doesn't deserve it and all of that. Who deserves it? Who can sell the most tickets? Sadly, this is a business. It's a sport business. We meshed the two. That fight's going to happen. There's no, you can write that down right now. Conor McGregor Poirier 3 will absolutely happen. And it will be each of their next fight. That kind of throws a monkey wrench into Chandler's and everybody else's plans in that division, though. And Khabib's not coming back. But I say that with a little bit of hesitation because I think this all could play out. Khabib's not old, right? Khabib's still 29-0. He's undefeated. So let's just say we do the trilogy with Poirier and McGregor. Conor wins it. Then Conor beats Gaethje, and then Conor beats Chandler. Well, he's got a hell of a good argument to be like, Khabib, you coming back or not? So, I feel like the UFC and a lot of people are looking at the short term. Maybe let's just look at it, broaden our lens back a little bit and look at this in a longer term perspective and look at it 2 and 3 fights down the line. So I'm not willing to count Khabib out, although I didn't think he was coming back to begin with. I think he's going to take an extended time off. But what happened to McGregor last night should be a warning to Khabib of what might happen when you take an extended period off.
Yeah, no doubt. And that was something that Conor McGregor talked about. You've got to be in there more. You got to be fighting more. And I think it's amazing that he looks so good. And I disagree with the people who are hating on Conor out there. I'm not a Conor homer. I'm not a fanboy. He's done so much for the sport and a lot for me in my career for sure. But Conor McGregor did not look bad in there last night as much as Dustin Poirier looked great. That's the thing we tend to do in sports, Jeff. Oh, that guy sucked or that team sucked. No, sometimes you're just in there against somebody who's better, either on that night or better in general. And Poirier has so much more time in the octagon than Conor McGregor in these last few years. So many more fights, so much more experience against top-level talent in recent years that definitely plays a part in it, without a doubt. But to say Conor McGregor didn't look good, to say that he looked slow, you're not watching that fight, man. You're just not watching it. Conor was very strong in the clinch. He was hitting him hard early. His elbow landed. His punches were landing. He hit him with a huge left, a couple of rights as well. Conor McGregor was not off his game last night. Conor McGregor slowed down immensely in that fight because of the calf kicks, and his shots were all over the place in the second round. He was missing with a lot of punches that he normally hits, but as he said after the fight, a lot of that had to do with the kicks from Poirier. All right, let's go back to the chat. Probably Zooted says Khabib will be back eventually, especially if Oliveira beats Poirier. Khabib Oliveira might be the fight we've talked about. It might be the best one for Khabib matchup-wise, but it just doesn't have the sizzle to it. Let's see. Connor is a goner. So Connor just got knocked out last night, and you're assuming Connor is going to come back and beat Dustin and Gaethje. You're delusional. We're not assuming anything. We're not assuming anything. We're saying that the fight to make is Conor Poirier 3. Answer me this in the chat room, guys. If you don't want to see Conor Poirier 3 next for the belt, what's a better fight, assuming Khabib's gone? What's another fight you guys in the chat would rather see than Conor Poirier 3? Throw it up there. We'll read it. I mean, really, what do you want to see? Do you want to see Conor Gaethje? But what about Poirier for the title? Is Poirier Gaethje, the rematch, a bigger fight than Conor? No. Is Poirier against Oliveira going to draw ants to a picnic? No. I mean, this is the fight. Jeff, you're right. This was Jeff's idea, not mine. It was what he said it 2 days ago. The fight to make is the trilogy. It just is.
Well, I'm not saying anybody's going to beat anybody. I'm looking at it from the way the UFC looks at fights. You know, if I got a $20 bill, a $50 bill, and a $100 bill on the ground, I'm not going to leave the $100 bill sitting there because it's got some dirt on it. That's the one I'm picking up. And this is the match the UFC is going to make, because it's not the 20, it's not the 50, it's the 100. You know, and so it's the fight that they're going to make, because it's going to be the biggest fight they can sell. Period. Are you going to tune in more for a trilogy between Poirier when they both hold knockout wins over each other and McGregor? Or are you going to tune in for Poirier and Chandler? Right? What's going to sell more pay-per-views? What's going to sell more tickets? What's going to get more media interest? What's going to promote the sport more? It's Conor. It's period. There's no really reason to discuss that. So then we get into who deserves it. Who deserves it? Does Conor deserve it? Does he deserve it? No, he doesn't. He just got blasted by Poirier. But whether or not somebody deserves a shot and they get it are two totally different universes.
Yeah, and how many times have we seen that? How many times have we seen that, Jeff? Literally, over the years, they're going to make the fights that make them the most money. This is not even the Zuffa era anymore. This is corporate-owned UFC. This is debt. This is money that has to be made. This is living up to agreements and fulfilling TV contracts. This is making money. It's more of a business than it's ever been. Anybody who thinks you're not going to see this fight is delusional, for sure. I know Dana is going to say, and he's going to really put a lot of pressure, and he said it last night, to do Poirier Chandler. That's what I think Dana would like to see happen, and then maybe Conor has to win a fight before he gets back, but I don't think that's what you're going to see at the end of the day. There's so many different things and different variables that go into it. But, man, I'm just really excited, Jeff, to think about the possibilities as we continue live right here. UFC 257. Might as well just call it the Fallout Show here today, and we're here for another hour and a half or so. I'm Jim Greishaber, Jeff Cain. Very, very pumped to say that we're presented by CBD Emporium featuring Level Select CBD. My brain's a little slow today, guys. Go to cbdemporium.com/Level Select MMA, cbdemporium.com/Level Select MMA. And here's what they're going to do for you. They're going to give you 50% off CBD Emporium and Level Select CBD products just by entering the code MMA50. MMA50 at cbdemporium.com/Level Select MMA. Level Select CBD. Stay in the fight. Man, this is fun, Jeff. I want to hit the chat again as we continue here live. And I want to, Poirier said Chandler does not deserve a title shot. Probably not right now, no. And think about the path that Poirier had to take and how many times he had to fight before he ever got a title shot. So when someone has to take that long of a route themselves, not having been that star and having that sizzle and everything, he's not going to want to give anybody a title shot overnight. Oliveira's won 7 in a row in the UFC. Again, he doesn't have that huge top-level win, and I'm not counting Tony Ferguson as a huge top-level win right now because I'm not convinced Tony Ferguson's at the top level anymore. And I hate to say that, but it's true. So that's not convincing enough for me to give Oliveira a title shot after what Gaethje did to Tony, and then you saw what Khabib did to Justin. So maybe Khabib just is on that level so far above everybody else. Maybe Dana was right, but everybody wants to see Conor versus Diaz 3. I know that in the chat. You guys are all over that. Maybe Conor goes up to welterweight and fights Masvidal, which would be great. But, if Poirier did that to him last night on the feet, Masvidal bigger and more powerful, that'd be interesting. And Taco Conch says Rafael Dos Nachos versus Conor McNuggets. Maybe, but not yet. Not yet. Conor's not slipped to that level yet, and RDA is trying to climb back up. But you have to keep Conor McGregor at the top as long as you can if you're the UFC, because you can do the Dos Anjos fight, and especially the Diaz fight much later on. Gaethje versus Poirier 2 for interim strap. Chandler versus Ferguson. Conor versus Nate. I hate to say this, and God forgive me, there might not be anything left of Tony Ferguson if he fights Michael Chandler. After what I've seen against Gaethje and Oliveira and what I saw from Chandler last night, I like the matchup, but I think if you're pushing Chandler for a title shot to go against a guy who's lost 2 in a row and has fallen out of the title picture, if you should lose that fight, you're killing him too and taking him out of the title picture. So I don't think any of that's going to happen, Jeff.
Yeah, I want to see Tony take some time off. You know, the loss to Gaethje was especially brutal, and then he lost the second one. I want to see him take, and it's funny because we're saying, you know, Conor kind of cited inactivity for his losses. I'm not saying Tony needs to stop training. I'm saying Tony might want to stop taking some shots to the head and everything, and let everything get back to normal for 6 to 8 months or a year before he comes back. If he really wants to have a shot at getting back to the top of that division. That's just my opinion. I'm not a doctor. But, you know, people keep saying, you know, it should be Gaethje and Poirier for the rematch. They both lost to Khabib. But, I mean, if Gaethje's coming off of a loss and can get a title fight, then why can't Conor? You know, but that's the problem with the top of the division now. We've got Poirier sitting there. We've got Gaethje coming off of a loss. We've got Conor coming off of a loss. And then we get into these other guys. Who may or may not deserve a title fight, but it's like I said, it's Conor Poirier 3. That's it. If Conor loses to RDA, let's just think about that. Then Conor's done. That's it. There's no marketability for him. If he loses to Poirier again, okay, so he lost to the #1 lightweight. You know, he can't lose to other people. And then you can't put him in there with people that he's going to ruin that you're building up. Matchmaking is like walking a tightrope. You know, and everything has an implication. You lean this way, and you know, you have to counterbalance that. And Conor McGregor is still a big draw. We saw that last night. And the biggest fight they can make is with Poirier. And everybody's just going to have to accept that. I hate to say that. We can talk about it till we're blue in the face. I'm telling you, the bout agreements are already written up for that. I guarantee it.
Already written up, you're saying?
100%. They all had verbal agreements before they left that building last night. Come on, man. Come on. You know, yeah, I mean, you heard them all. I mean, it makes sense for everybody, right? It makes sense for Conor because if he avenges the loss, then it's like last night kind of was a mulligan. And then if Poirier wins, then he solidifies that he's the top guy. Last night wasn't a fluke. The inactivity wasn't anything. I'm just the better fighter. And for the UFC, we get another Conor pay-per-view that's probably going to outsell what last night did. And so that's the fight to make. No other fight is going to draw that interest or get that attention or make that amount of money. You know, and there's a ton of interesting matchups in the division. You know, we can go through them all we want. Chandler and Gaethje's the fight that our hardcore fans are going to want to see, man. Right? They're both Chandler's new in the organization. Like you said, they both are held pretty significant belts outside of the UFC. Their stylistic matchup, and who doesn't want to see that? It's got fight of the night or knockout of the night written all over it. That's the fight to make right now. And Gaethje, the UFC, if Gaethje loses that, then that's back-to-back losses and whatever. But the UFC's got a lot of mileage out of Gaethje already. You know, Chandler's the guy that they're putting.
They're pushing Chandler. No, I was just going to say, Jeff, what about the possibility? And people are saying this in the chat, and it is legitimate. When does the UFC start to feel like they lose a little bit of credibility if they keep booking Conor into a title fight, even though he's now lost to Khabib and he's 1-2, and his only wins against Cowboy Cerrone in the last 2.5 years? The legitimacy could possibly be called into question. Dare I say it? In the words Conor McGregor, an illegitimate title shot. I never thought those words would leave my mouth, but people in the chat are saying that, and it's actually a decent point. And another thing I just saw was Chandler versus Gaethje versus Poirier. I'm sorry, Gaethje versus Chandler, the winner versus Poirier, because you don't know what Conor's going to do. But is that a fair point? Yeah. Is that a fair question for me to ask? Would it lose legitimacy if you just book Conor McGregor in a title fight when he's 1-2 in the last 2 years and his wins against Cowboy?
I mean, they booked Nick Diaz for a title fight when he was coming off of a year suspension and a loss. And look, we can talk about integrity all we want. CM Punk fought in the UFC. Let's just bury that integrity shit right now.
Yeah.
You know,
There's
I mean,
that.
I'm just saying, man. People get caught up in the sad stories, Jim. The reality is, this is a business and it's also a sport. But so we have to do the number one contender matchups and build people up. But we also have to do the fights that people want to see and are going to come out for. And Conor McGregor's still the biggest star in the sport. I mean, he's still the biggest star in the sport. And as far as Diaz and Conor 3, Conor can lose the Poirier, lose the Gaethje, and still fight Diaz and draw interest. Diaz is just, that's the backbone burner fight that you always have, right? You always have
RDA or any of those guys, right? Conor can fight anybody. You're right, Jeff, 100%. And I agree. You'd have to make the fight now with Conor and Poirier, the trilogy. And look, Conor's performance last night, while it wasn't a victorious, for Notorious, he literally represented himself well. He fought a good fight. Minus that exchange in the second round that led to the end where he missed on some wild shots and then Poirier caught him. Minus that, Conor's takedown defense, look, he did get up from that first takedown. He got up and he actually controlled Poirier more in the clinch than Poirier did Conor. And he landed a bunch of big shots in that fight. In fact, I would argue that Conor won the first round. I don't know how the judges would have scored it because of the takedown, but based on the shots that were landed in that round by Conor, I give him the 10-9 round, and then Poirier finishes it in round 2. So it isn't like Conor came out and got knocked out in 20 seconds or a minute and a half and didn't make a good showing for himself. He threw hard. He gave Poirier everything he had. And Dustin Poirier, I get tired of people saying someone's bad because they lose. Poirier was great last night. He wasn't good. He wasn't very good. He was great in that fight. Give the guy his credit. He's elite. He's at the top of the division, at the top of the rankings. He's had the gold around his waist. He got the Khabib title shot. And let's not forget, I've said it a million times, he had the choke on Khabib. He came, I thought for a second in Khabib Poirier 1, hopefully there's a 2, I thought for a second that he, like, holy crap, he's about to tap out Khabib. Didn't end up happening. Khabib reversed it and did the same thing to him. But at the end of the day, Conor McGregor lost to a fighter who's at the very top of that division. He didn't lose to a Cowboy Cerrone. He didn't lose to even a Tony Ferguson right now. You can make all those fights later. RDA, Tony Ferguson, and especially Diaz. For Conor McGregor, anytime. The Holloway rematch, anytime. But as far as business goes, and this is what you guys don't get, and I hate to say it like that, but you just don't. And this is what Jeff is saying. This is a business. Let me repeat. This is a business. First and foremost, we all want to see the best fighters fight each other. And let's be honest, the UFC spoiled us, Jeff, for so many years because, hey, boxing, when do you ever see it? Mayweather and Pacquiao, it was way too late for those guys to fight. You never see the fights you want to see, hardly ever in boxing. The UFC's always given us that, but it still is a business. And Conor Poirier 3 is the fight to make with Justin Gaethje and Michael Chandler as the co-main event. And there you have it right there. Maybe June, maybe July, somewhere around that time. Let's go.
Yeah, Conor looked fine last night. I mean, what happened to Conor McGregor is he got out there and he took 2 of those calf kicks. And the damage was quick, right? And so what happened in the second round is Conor got a little, he overcommitted on some things, got out of position. He got desperate because he knew I have to get him out of here now because I'm not going to be able to take too many more of these. And that's something that he hadn't experienced in his career. And so he made some mistakes and paid the price for it. Conor looked fine up until that point. I really feel like that's what happened. I felt like Poirier, Mike Brown, and them had a perfect game plan. Poirier went in there and landed the leg kicks early, putting in that work in a 5-round fight, knowing it'd pay dividends late. It started paying dividends early. And when Conor realized my leg is compromised, he felt like he needed to get Poirier out of there then. And in trying to do so, ate some big shots and got finished. That's what happened. Conor looked fine last night. Like I said, I felt like as soon as his butt hit the ground on the takedown, he scooted over to the cage. He got to his feet. He reversed positions along the cage. He landed strikes, landed big shots. I think what happened to him is Poirier snuck in those leg kicks and Conor underestimated those. Like when the first couple of landed, and then when the third landed, he was like, "Oh shit, this isn't good," and then it changed everything.
I like Taco Conk, and I'm going to say Conk because Conk is like a snail, I lived in Florida for 12 years, like Conch Chowder. Taco Conch says, third fight will have Dustin's hot sauce and proper 12 plastered all over the octagon. I love that, Taco. That's awesome. I mean, maybe.
And it probably will.
Why not?
It probably will.
They'd rather do that than pay him.
But look, it just, fighters, Tito Ortiz used to have punishment, his company logos on the octagon whenever he fought. It's just something they work into their contracts, So yes, when they redo the contracts and try to sign the bout agreements for this trilogy fight, yeah, you might very well see some hot sauce on the post, on the octagon, and some proper 12 logos on there. I don't have. I like
Linnell's quote there. Well, the business will fail if they keep beating a dead horse. I mean, I guess, right? But not really. You'll never fail by booking Conor McGregor as a main event at a UFC fight. It'll never fail. Never.
Yeah.
It will never
fail.
The
horse isn't dead. The horse isn't dead yet. And I'll tell you what, a lame horse McGregor sells more pay-per-views than a stallion that we see any of the other guys on the roster. And so, I mean, Conor McGregor his stock has to diminish so far for him to even get to the next guy in pay-per-view. And
Conor
so
against me would do $1 million buys, Jeff. Conor against me would do $1 million.
Yeah. But he's only got that one more time, in my opinion. Yeah. And then he has to win in it, and then he extends the longevity. And that's the way the UFC's looking. How can we? And that's not the way the UFC's looking at it. The UFC's not like in for like Conor McGregor's this good guy. We want Conor McGregor to win. No, Conor McGregor is the star, and so you want to put him in fights. That's it. Trust me, Conor McGregor's a faceless human being. If that's a different person altogether and he's still that big of a star, he gets the same concessions that Conor McGregor gets. He's not special. He's special in his He's special in his popularity. Conor will get that fight because it can set up bigger fights. Is there any bigger fight than a Khabib and Conor 3 or 2? No. The only way to get back there is for Conor to beat Poirier again.
Well, Poirier is the second biggest fight, though. He's the second biggest fight after Conor Khabib. 2, it's Conor Poirier. 3, 1, it's a trilogy. But 2, Poirier became a much, much bigger star last night. And let's be real, he sold a hell of a lot of hot sauce this week. I mean, he handed Conor one, right there the day before at the weigh-ins. And I kind of like what True Leo says, give Dustin the belt for last night, then whoever, it could sell more. Not from the standpoint of, hey, give him the belt after what he did last night. That would never happen. But Poirier did say, I'm the champ. And right now, if Khabib's not there, Poirier is the champ. He has a win over Gaethje. He just beat Conor. So at the top of the division, there's no one else who could claim it. Michael Chandler just came in, but I'm really excited to see what happens here moving forward. And then I want to say Ali Khan C40, great in the chat. He's been great. Conor is the only fighter who can rub a loss off like it never happened. The Dark Cloud NC.
Not true.
But Ali Khan CU-40 says Khabib's hold on, Jeff. I'm finishing here. He said Khabib kids. 1 Conor, 2 Tony, 3 Poirier, 4 Gaethje, 5 Chandler, 6 Oliveira. Saying that no one can beat Khabib. That's the point.
No, nobody can beat Khabib. That's why the division's more interesting. But that's not true about Conor's the only one that can rub off a loss. Had Ronda come out and won after getting knocked out by Holly Holm, everybody forgot about it. When Liddell lost to Randy Couture in that first title fight when Tito held out, he bounced right back and got big fights after that. Several of these guys can kind of rub off one fight, especially if you beat the guy that just beat you. Right? I mean, I can't erase a win, you beating me by beating Scott. But if we rematch and I win against you, then I kind of erased the first one in a way. I didn't. We're just 1-1. But a lot of people look at it as you reversed it or erased it, and it didn't matter. I feel bad for Chandler in all of this, because he came in there like at the end of the co-main event before the main event started. It's Michael Chandler. Oh my God, Michael Chandler's debut. He crushed the guy. Michael Chandler's a contender, and then the main event kind of everybody forgot about him. But Chandler, because Conor lost, is now. And Conor won, Chandler might have got a title fight in his next fight. But now that Conor lost, we're probably going to see the trilogy, and Chandler's going to have to go fight somebody else.
Because Conor won the first fight. That's the only way that works. And he did. He won the first fight. They're 1-1 against each other. They both talked about it right after the fight. Let's run it back. Dustin said it in his post-fight interview. Conor said it in his post-fight interview. Jack Flower says Oliveira versus Chandler. You burn one of those guys from a title shot right there. And I think Chandler Gaethje is the fight to make. Keegan, anyone else thinking that people are writing off Dustin's performance? Hell yes. Hell yes, Keegan.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone is writing off Dustin
agree with
Poirier's performance. And it makes me sick. It actually makes me sick that people would rather bash Conor than give props to Dustin Poirier. It's the world we live in. I know I've been bitching about it the whole show, Jeff, but honestly speaking, man, give credit where credit is due. Give credit where credit is due. It's not that hard. I'm not losing hope for you guys. Dustin Poirier deserves all the credit in the world for that performance last night. We're talking about one of the best in the world for a long time in 2 divisions. We're talking about a guy who's beaten Max Holloway a couple of times. He's destroyed Anthony Pettis and Eddie Alvarez and had Khabib in a choke that could have won him that fight. He's beaten Justin Gaethje after absorbing punishment, came back and knocked him out in his home state in Arizona. I was right there. So at the end of the day, to not give Dustin Poirier and his great team at American Top Team all the credit for that performance instead of trying to take it away from Conor is doing a huge disservice to Poirier. Although, Jeff, I don't think he's really caring all that much right now because he's laughing all the way to the bank.
No, I don't think Poirier cares one way or another. No, Poirier deserves all the props in the world. Poirier did exactly what he needed to do. When we talked about the fight and when Khabib talked about the fight, Poirier approached it intelligently. He faced it, he absorbed some shots, but the game plan went off flawlessly. And he beat Conor McGregor. And at the end of the day, if like I said, you take a step back and look at it, Poirier is a more well-rounded fighter than Conor McGregor. It's just that Conor McGregor's attributes sometimes outweigh where he lacks in other areas. And Poirier was able to put it all together last night with leg kicks, finished him with punches, was able to work in takedowns. The only thing we didn't get to see Poirier do against Conor McGregor was try to submit him.
Without a doubt. And Brian Blaze has a good comment in the chat, and we're going to do a roll call in a minute here, guys. But Brian Blaze says Chandler versus Gaethje, Conor versus Ferguson, Dustin versus Oliveira. Yeah, I mean, that would be because Conor will easily, I think, beat Tony Ferguson, and Tony would love it. Think of the promo leading up to that fight. But Chandler Gaethje, to me, that's the fight to make, man. And Dana did say he wants to see Poirier versus Chandler. I would like to see Chandler Gaethje and the winner get Poirier if you're not going to give it to Conor. If Conor changes his mind and walks away, I would love to see Chandler Gaethje with the winner fighting Poirier, and that's the way I would do it. And again, Oliveira is not going to be there, in my opinion. So that's interesting right there. I mean, the scenarios are there, Jeff. Little by little, we're gonna find out, and we're gonna inch closer. I do think we're gonna see Poirier McGregor 3, but I also think it's a good possibility we see Chandler Poirier. Also think it's a good possibility we see Gaethje and Chandler with the winner fighting Poirier, because then Dustin would probably feel like Chandler earned the title shot with a win over Gaethje following a win over Hooker. He'd have to.
Yeah, look, this didn't have to be this complicated. In my opinion, the UFC dropped the ball here, right? Khabib retired. He announced his retirement in the cage. Had last night been for a title, then nobody's complaining for Conor to get a rematch for the title. It was already for the title. But because it wasn't for the title, because we held out hope that Khabib was going to come back when he really wasn't after he announced his retirement. Let's just go back to Henry Cejudo. When he announced his retirement, did he get stripped of it?
I mean, not really, but yeah. Yeah.
I mean, pretty much, when you announce your retirement, you don't have the belt anymore. We're moving on. And the UFC didn't do that with Khabib. And so now Poirier is sitting there. That should have been a championship fight last night. Why even bring McGregor back to fight Cowboy if it wasn't going to set up that? And so last night should have been for a title fight. And then nobody's complaining. Then Conor's getting the title fight off of a loss against the guy he lost to in the title fight. And so it didn't have to be this complicated. It really didn't. They should have. Khabib, when he retired, this should have been for the championship. Poirier is the champion today. Conor's getting a rematch for the belt against Poirier that just beat him for the belt. And then everything becomes, it could have been more clear. I feel like the UFC dropped the ball by hanging on to the hope that Khabib was going to come back. And now the division's all crazy because Poirier's not the champion when he rightfully should be the champion today.
Maybe, but look, I mean, sometimes you got to give a legendary fighter the benefit of the doubt. And Henry's going to say that. But at the end of the day, Khabib was the winner in the biggest fight in UFC history. His pay-per-view draws since then have been huge. So he has a little more leeway than a lot of other stars do. He's at the very top of the game. And anybody who thinks that there isn't such a thing as star treatment, the bigger the star you are, the more you get away with. And maybe that was what Dana White wanted to do, to kind of string us all along. And you bring up a great point, Jeff, that it is maybe a disservice to the division and the company, but you give Khabib every opportunity to come back and fight Conor for that belt. And now you don't have a champion, in theory, unless they know something we don't know. And Dana will tell us, if you don't know now, you know.
Well, I mean, look, then they should have crowned an interim champion last night. You know, like I said, the reason why people are saying Conor doesn't deserve a rematch is because he's coming off of a loss. But if it was a loss in a title fight, they're okay with that. Hence Gaethje, you know? And so,
yeah.
I feel like they dropped the ball a little bit. They should have done an interim title or just, you know, made last night a title fight. And if Khabib wanted to come back after that, you know, be like, okay, I guess we're going to unify the two champions. Khabib's going to come back. But after a fighter announces his retirement and you're trying to set up the next step, I feel like last night should have been for a title.
Yeah, and you make a great point. And Jeff, you've been on the button with everything so far. I love it. You picked Poirier. You said Khabib's not coming back. And, you know, that's 18 years of experience. Check out Jeff's work along with the rest of our team, Ken Pishna, and all the guys writing for us at MMAWeekly.com. All the coverage, all the fallout there on the webpage. We're right here today, and we're going to, of course, have more shows coming your way, so keep checking back every single week. We're going to be here with multiple shows as we continue with the Roundup show, the Fallout show. Maybe we should change this to the Fallout show, because there's so much fallout today when you're thinking about this. But I like what Undisputed MMA put in there, too, in the chat. McGregor versus RDA, Poirier versus Oliveira, Tony versus Chandler. Look, there's no way on God's green earth you're seeing Poirier versus Oliveira right now. I will do a naked chicken dance if that's the next fight for the UFC belt at 155. You would have to invade Dana White's home with a SWAT team and hold his wife and children hostage. And even that might not get him to make that fight.
Yeah, that you're not gonna see that fight. I don't know. You know, Poirier has his way. We can see Poirier and Gaethje too. If they decide that Conor's not going to fight Poirier for whatever reason, Conor's going to fight somebody, I think, in the bottom half of the top 10. Because you can't have Conor go out there and lose, you know, in his next fight. But that's what I'm saying about Poirier is let's make it like, you know, we're kind of talking about money and business and entertainment side of the sport, but Poirier, the rematch makes sense because then there's no more discussions, right? We're not giving Conor an easy fight. You know, we're not giving him the number 11th ranked guy and padding his record so he can get back to the top. That's what you do if you're working for Conor McGregor. You get Conor McGregor right back in there at Poirier. Okay, you said that your leg was compromised from the calf kicks. Make the adjustment in training. Come back. We're going to run this back. And if you lose that, then we're going to go. You're going to rematch or do the trilogy with Diaz, and then probably retire on your yacht.
Yeah, he never got to fight Tony. He never got to fight RDA. There's a lot of fights that you could put Conor in that would do great. Diaz is the biggest one. And then you think about Masvidal, Conor. Masvidal might be on his way down to the point where he might not get another title shot. I hate to say that because I like the guy too, but Conor Masvidal is a big fight. Conor Diaz, Conor RDA, Conor Tony. Those are all huge fights. Conor Gaethje, Conor Chandler. Down the line, any of those fights with no title implications are all great fights, and they're all big draws. But if you want to keep Conor at the top where you can get the most out of him, Jeff, your plan makes the most sense. It just does. Conor Poirier 3.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think that's the way the UFC is going to go. I mean, we'll see how it all plays out, but I think that's the way the UFC is going to go. You know, like I said, the division's much more interesting now that Khabib has been removed kind of from it, where we set him aside, and Khabib is levels ahead of everybody, right? I mean, he has beaten Poirier, he has beaten Gaethje, he has beaten McGregor. There's nothing left for him to do. The most interesting match in that division, I'll still say, but for me, it would be Khabib versus Oliveira. But Oliveira doesn't deserve that, you know, and he's not a name. But that's the most interesting fight for me stylistically because what's going to happen when it hits the ground. At the top of the division, man, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Gaethje and Chandler's, you salivate when you think about that one. Well, so you put that one together for sure. And then you kind of wait and see what happens to Tony. I mean, Tony and RDA is a fight that I like because their eras are kind of past them a little bit. And so it's kind of a one of you staying and one of you's going kind of a deal. Or at least in relevancy.
Yeah, they are in relevancy. I mean, I don't know. I think that's the fight card. You're right, Jeff. It's Conor Poirier 3. It's Chandler versus Gaethje. Someone put in the chat, who wins? Who wins? I mean, that fight, Chandler versus Gaethje. I mean, that's got just violence all over it. Gaethje's a good wrestler. Chandler's probably a better wrestler, but not by much. Gaethje and Chandler both have a ton of power. Gaethje probably has more power, but again, not by much. The Gaethje under Trevor Whitman, the Chandler in the UFC now, that fight right there, as far as the division itself goes, and think about this, Jeff, I'm not, Khabib Oliveira will be great, but as far as actually being a great fight, just the fight, not the implications, not the money, not anything else, is there a fight any of you in the chat, any of us would rather see than Michael Chandler against Justin Gaethje? I don't think there is. That's the fight I want to see.
That's a fun fight. It's an interesting matchup. I like Gaethje in it because of his jab, and Chandler kind of moves forward. And so I think Gaethje's going to get to establish his jab. And when you land the jab, boom, the leg kick opens. And when Gaethje starts landing leg kicks, that changes fights. But it's also going to force Chandler to press forward harder and try to get that takedown. It's a very interesting fight. And not to mention, Chandler's got knockout power in both of his hands. And Gaethje has a tendency to get hit, So it's a very interesting fight. I like Gaethje in the fight, though, stylistically with the leg kicks and his jab, and I think he'll be able to counter wrestle what Chandler brings to the table. But he's got to avoid taking one of those big shots because when Chandler hits you, man, you go to sleep.
You go to sleep fast when Michael Chandler hits you. That left, it kind of looked like Weidman's hook on Silva, didn't it? Yeah. Silva was obviously playing with him, but that hook that Chandler threw, it kind of looked like that hook that Weidman hit Silva with in the first fight.
Yeah, it was a nice little leaping left hook. Hooker was trying to rotate out to his right, which is Chandler's left, and he just met him. He like leaped in with this huge left hook and just met him. It's perfect timing, and his legs just buckled and caved, and that was it. Hooker took his gloves off. Did you notice that? Took his gloves off and left him in the octagon last night.
Yeah, he did.
But I haven't heard anything.
Crazy, right?
That's really crazy to me. That's really crazy.
30? He's only 30 years old, isn't he?
Yeah.
I think he's only 30.
Yeah, that had to be based on emotion, man. Because look, you just lost to Chandler. that's not a bad loss. That's really not a bad loss. It sucks that's back-to-back losses for you, but man, you just gotta you pick yourself up and dust yourself off and try to run again. That's what makes Poirier so great, right? That's why everybody respects Poirier so much, is he's had to pick himself up, dust himself off, and get back on the horse. And he's done it several times in his career. So it's unfortunate that wasn't for the championship last night, for Poirier's sake. He deserves a belt and not an interim one, And I only say that because Khabib's gone. If Khabib's there, then, well, Dustin,
is he really that much better than everybody else, Khabib? He definitely is great, but I've never really seen him as being so far above everybody else. And look, he beat Conor, and how big of a win is that now? He never fought Tony Ferguson. He did beat Gaethje. He did beat Poirier. He's beaten everybody at the top of the division. But people now have this thought process when it comes to Khabib that he's just that much better than everybody else. And I don't buy it. I think Poirier could beat him. I think Michael Chandler could give him a hell of a fight. I think Oliveira could give him a hell of a fight. I think Khabib knows this, and I think Khabib loves the competition. And what Dana said, hey, Khabib told me, Dana, be honest with yourself. I'm so much better than these guys. I don't know. I don't know if that's the case. I don't feel like that's true. I feel like he'd be the favorite. I feel like I'd make him the favorite over any of those guys. But I do believe that some of those guys could give him a great fight, if not get their hand raised.
I think Khabib is levels ahead of everybody on the ground when it comes to wrestling and chain wrestling and just controlling you once he's in top position. I do believe he's levels ahead of everybody. But, man, he's got holes in his game and his striking, and there's no question about that. And he's been hit before. And so that's probably what Conor thinks, right? Khabib doesn't have great head movement, and he rushes in sometimes to set up the takedowns. And so any one of these guys could catch Khabib. And no, I'm not hating on Khabib. I'm telling you that's where you can catch
Here come those comments,
where
Jeff.
it is. Yeah.
Here come those comments. And Taco Conk has a great one. Is it just me? Are you ready? Oh, my God, this is great. Scott, you got to throw that up there. Is it just me, or does Jeff Cain look like a chef for a fancy restaurant? Look at it. Look at his top. I mean, it's kind of like the Gordon Ramsay, Bobby Flay. It'd be a fancy chef coat. What do you think, Jeff? Can you cook? Would you be a good chef?
I do cook most of our meals. I probably wouldn't be a good chef, but look, we're cooking up predictions today, baby. So
we're cooking. Chef Jeff. It rolls off the tongue, Chef Jeff.
Chef Jeff. Yeah, there you go.
Man, how about this? Let's see. We're going in the chat. Chandler or Charlie Olive is fight to make. Well, yeah, but I mean that fight to me, yeah, it is a good fight to make. Very dangerous for Chandler if you're pushing him for a title. And I'll just be real with you. The last thing the UFC wants, if you're to pull everybody in the company, every single one of the sponsors, every single one of the marketing people, the last thing, and the media, the last thing anybody wants to see is Oliveira be the champion in this division. And that's no disrespect to him. I'm talking about purely from a money standpoint, purely from a marketing standpoint, purely from a sales standpoint. He's the last guy anybody wants to see with that belt around his waist. And I hate to say that because I hate even talking like that about fighters. But truth be told, it is a money game. It is a money sport. It is a business. Chandler would do really well as a champ in terms of drawing power. Gaethje would elevate. Poirier, I think in time, after what happened last night, his star power is way up there. There are a bunch of guys, but I don't think Oliveira is good enough to be the champion anyway, so I don't think it'll matter.
Yeah, I don't, Oliveira's been around for a long time, and he's been in there with some really tough guys, and he's also a guy sort of like Poirier that's had to, go back and reinvent himself and come back over and over again. I have a lot of respect for Charles Oliveira and where he is right now because he's on that 7-fight win streak after those losses, and it's just so hard to do that. It's so hard to do that. But Charles Oliveira is not going to get close to a title fight. His best chance of getting a title fight is if Khabib says, I'm only going to fight him. And it's not because he's a bad fighter or because he doesn't deserve it even. It's because the matchups at the top of the division are too compelling. They're too fan-friendly, and the names involved. And so you're going to see Oliveira. He might get to a title fight, but it's not going to be soon. He's going to have to beat some of these guys, and now they're all tied up in fights. So who does he even fight? There's who you're going to see fight an RDA or somebody like that. You're not going to see one of these top guys. The matchups are already lined up for the most part of what the UFC wants to do in the top of that division. And so Oliveira's on the outside looking in. He's just got to pick up a couple of wins in the meantime while Poirier, McGregor, and Chandler and Gaethje sort this top out.
Yeah, in almost any other division, I definitely would say this, including middleweight, including light heavyweight, especially right now, Oliveira would get a title shot maybe right now, but not at 55, not right now. No way. And even Max Holloway, people talk about a Conor Max rematch. Max is waiting for the winner of Volko and T-City. And people are saying, hey, Volko's going to have to give Max the fight. Volko's got a tough fight on his hands coming up against Brian Ortega, who looks great coming back off that layoff. New team, new coach, new everything for T-City. And you think about Brian Ortega and Volkanovski at 45, Volko could go up to 55. He was a 230-pound rugby player. So there's another guy who could potentially come up to 55. Holloway could eventually be back in that picture with a couple more wins. You don't know what's going to happen, but right now it's so jammed up at the top. And look, this could all fall apart tomorrow. Khabib never comes back. Conor changes his mind. I'm done. I'm not fighting again, or I'm going to go box Manny Pacquiao. And then all of a sudden, what's a huge, huge division and stacked at the top becomes Poirier, Chandler, and Oliveira with Gaethje looking in.
That's true. That's true. I think this is going to eat Conor up. I think this is going to drive Conor crazy. And you saw him at the post-fight press conference. He's already analyzing it. He's like, when I caught those kicks, I should have pressed forward, put him against the cage and roughed him up. I was winning in the clinch. And so he's already playing out the mistakes that he made in that fight last night and how he can reverse those mistakes and have a success in the third fight. This is going to eat him up just like the Diaz loss did. People can say whatever they want about Conor, man. Yeah, Conor's not the same dude. And Conor mentioned that last night. He's a father now. He's got way more responsibility. He's not that hungry, poor kid coming out of Ireland. He's got a very comfortable life. And to find that drive, it's sometimes difficult. But when you get beat up by Poirier, all of a sudden it becomes laser focused. And I expect Conor McGregor to come back and come back strong. I'm not saying he's going to win, the trilogy, but I'm saying he's going to go home. He's going to watch that fight religiously. He's going to send Dana text. He's going to be saying how he should have beat Poirier, and I'll kill Poirier in the trilogy fight. And he's going to prepare. They're going to come back and have it, and he's going to try to win it. I think that the loss is going to be good for McGregor. You're not superhuman. You can't just take time off like that. You have to be active. You got to be active against the best people in the world. Not just anybody, not just a cowboy. Cowboy's not the top of the division. Poirier is. You got to be in there with those guys on a regular basis. And I think McGregor realized that. This is all about pride right now. McGregor don't need any money. This is about pride, and that is a very proud man.
Yeah, no doubt. And I like what Linnell Bishop put in the chat, because I'm partial to jiu-jitsu. I love jiu-jitsu. I know you are, Jeff, as well. And it doesn't always translate to exciting fights in the octagon, like a Damian Maia fight, for example. But he puts Oliveira is a warrior, and he's great for the BJJ community. BJJ really needs Oliveira. And, of course, Royce Gracie with jiu-jitsu in the beginning. There have been so many decorated Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Look at what Matt Serra became a champion, a world champion in jiu-jitsu. So many of them. Mackenzie Dern's making a run right now. But it is a good time for BJJ when you think about a guy like Oliveira and then Gilbert Burns, who's getting a title shot against Usman coming up next month. So Burns becoming a champion, Oliveira potentially becoming a champion. Yeah, that would be great for the BJJ community. Yeah,
and Poirier's a black belt. It's
a great point.
Yeah,
Poirier's a black belt.
Yeah, he is good for the BJJ community, and it's different, because people will say, well, Khabib wins by submissions, but he's not a BJJ guy. He's a Sambo guy. In fact, he kind of puts BJJ down on his shirt sometimes that he wears. But yeah, Oliveira is he's very respected. Like I said, Oliveira is a lot like Poirier. In the fight community, Oliveira is a very respected warrior who's had ups and downs, and he's on a big up right now. But can he reach that top? Can he reach the top? He's at the top floor, but he can't get access to the penthouse just yet. And we'll see. He's going to be one of those Poiriers that's going to take a while, because he doesn't have the flash. That's what it is. He doesn't have the flash. He doesn't have the fan base to demand that he get that title shot or demand that he get a contender shot. And so he's going to have to beat the people. He's going to have to pick up the scraps right here of what happens at the top and just be there. Be there still standing when this sorts out, and that's your title shot.
Do you think, Jeff, and I'm going to go through the rankings here in a second, and we're going to do our roll call with the chat because I love doing that, but going through the rankings, do you think Chandler ends up at number 4? Because you got Gaethje, Poirier, and Oliveira, and then you had Conor, Ferguson, Hooker. Hooker just got obliterated by Chandler. He has to be higher than him. Ferguson's lost 2 in a row, and McGregor just got beat by Poirier. Does Chandler come in higher than Conor? Does he fall in between Hooker and Ferguson? Does he fall in between Ferguson and Conor? Where does Michael Chandler end up in the rankings after that? And Poirier, does he leapfrog Gaethje? He has to be up at number 1.
Yeah, and he has a win over Gaethje. He's going to leapfrog Gaethje for sure.
Okay.
So
where does Chandler
where's
end up?
Oliveira ranked? Where's
3.
Oliveira ranked? Chandler comes in at 4. Chandler's going to come in at 4.
And Gaethje falls to 2 or 3. Does Oliveira leapfrog Gaethje now too? Does Gaethje drop a couple spots without even fighting?
Wouldn't. Yeah, I would not, because Gaethje's big loss recently was to the champ, right? To the undefeated champ. And so I keep Gaethje pretty much where he is. I put Gaethje at number 2, Poirier at number 1, leave Oliveira at 3, throw Chandler in at 4, and then was Conor already 5th before the loss? I probably keep Conor
4.
where
Conor's
he is.
4, Kukui 5.
Okay. Well,
So
they're all going to
Gaethje,
come down
Poirier.
a spot, because I'm going to slide. Yeah, I'm going to slide Michael Chandler in at 4, which is going to push everybody down a slot. But Conor's going to stay. It's going to make him 6. He just lost to Poirier. That's not a bad. It's not. And he lost to the number 1 guy. That's how can you fall? And unless you're the champion, any loss to the number 1 guy outside of a total just obliteration. I don't know how you really drop in the rankings. You lost to the guy ranked at the top of the division. To me, you don't drop until you lose just dramatically, or you lose to somebody behind you.
Yeah, no doubt. And just 1 second on the roll call, but MMA King has a great, and this is completely unrelated, but it caught my eye as we're talking about rankings and fights we want to see. Conor Khabib 2, very high on the list. Conor Poirier 3 is a fight I would really want to see. Jon Jones against Stipe. Jon Jones against Ngannou. There are so many, Israel Adesanya against Jon Jones, which is, Izzy going up to fight Blachowicz, and that's one fight away from a Jon Jones Adesanya fight, which everyone wants to see. So MMA King says, I want Jon Jones to become heavyweight champ and Israel become double champ, middleweight and light heavyweight champ, and they can fight for 3 belts, which obviously wouldn't happen, but Izzy would fight for a 3rd belt.
Yeah.
I think Adesanya is a guy who could win 3 belts, honestly speaking. I think he could win the belt in all 3 of those divisions with his fighting style. I don't think there's any doubt about it.
It depends on who the heavyweight champion is. If it's Stipe, yeah, I like Izzy's match. It's going to be a stand-up fight for the most part. And so it just comes down to, can he put the combinations together and get him out of there? For instance, I know he's retired, but if it were Daniel Cormier, who's just going to put Izzy against the fence and maul him for 5 rounds, no, he's not going to win that.
No.
But right now, which is weird, because
Stipe's a bad matchup for him too, no? Stipe a bad matchup for him?
It's a better matchup because Stipe is going to keep it standing and at distance where Israel has his most success. But no, I think Stipe beats Izzy, but Izzy's in that
using
fight
his wrestling.
And Izzy's striking might keep him in that fight. But man, if Stipe touches Izzy on the chin, it's not going to be good, man. That's a middleweight getting hit by a heavyweight. It would have to be a small. I don't want him going to heavyweight. Light heavyweight, though, I think he can do it. What sucks is that Jon Jones is getting so beefy that he's not going to be able to drop back down to light heavyweight to face Izzy if he wins. That's probably going to end up being one of the biggest fights in UFC history if they are able to put it together. If Israel Adesanya wins the 205-pound title and Jon Jones doesn't come down to fight him, then that's just crazy. Except the guy's weighing 250 pounds now. He's not.
Yeah, he's on to the next one. No, he's not. And Izzy's going to have to meet him at heavyweight if he wants to do it. Because what else does Jon Jones have to prove? And we've talked about he has nothing to prove anyway. But going up and becoming a 2-division champ, already people are calling Jon Jones the GOAT. And I don't think there's any dispute. He's the greatest of all time. Just look at his body of work. He's cleaned out 3 generations of fighters, from the legends who he came in and just destroyed, the Shoguns, Machidas, the Rampages, the Rashads, then his contemporaries, the Cormiers, the Gustafsons, those guys. And now the Santos and Reyes and Anthony Smith. He's cleaned out 3 eras, 3 generations of fighters from 205. And right now, why would Jon Jones want to fight Jan Blachowicz? Just being real. And who else is there for him to fight at 205 other than Izzy coming up? But for Jon Jones to cement his status as the greatest of all time, clearly becoming an undefeated heavyweight champion with a couple of title defenses does that. And there's definitely no argument in that conversation ever again with Jon Jones. But Jon Jones has some problems facing him at heavyweight. There are some matchups that are really bad, at least on paper for him, but he does look amazing at 250, man. And I do see Jones Stipe being a hell of a fight. I see Jones and Ngannou being a one-sided fight for Jon Jones. I really do. I don't think Francis can handle Jon Jones. His athleticism is too much. His fight IQ is too much. His wrestling, his everything about Jones in that fight is a huge advantage for him. I do think if Ngannou beats Stipe, Jones has a better shot to beat Ngannou than he does Miocic. What do you think, Jeff?
I don't know, because I don't think Jon Jones has looked that great in his last couple of fights at 205. He's
true.
Won those fights. Don't get me wrong. He's won those fights, but he's taken
Or
more
are the guys
damage.
just getting better?
Yeah, exactly.
Are the opponents just getting better?
Yeah, moving to heavyweight worries me, because Jon Jones doesn't have knockout power at 205. That's not where he beats you. He beats you with accumulation of strikes. He's not a one-punch, one-hitter quitter. He's not Ngannou. He's not Stipe, except he's going to go in there against those guys. And he's taken damage from 205-pound guys in his last. I don't know, man. I've got to kind of let Jones go into heavyweight marinate a little bit. I don't like it. I don't think Jon Jones is going to have success at heavyweight. I think Jon Jones is going to get knocked out. I think Jon Jones is going to get face power. I think Stipe is going to be faster than Jon Jones.
You became the number 1 most popular guy on the planet, because everyone in the chat's ripping on Jon Jones right now, and they love you now, Jeff, for that, because not a lot of Jon Jones fans out there right now. I personally like him. He's been cool to me. I love him in the cage, the performances, but there's no denying the stuff that's happened outside of the cage. There's no denying the positive tests and things like that. And You know, when you cost the UFC a main event at UFC 200 the week of, oh my God, that was just awful. I remember that like it was yesterday, that terrible feeling that we all got. We all saw DC's reaction when Dana gave him the news. And, you know, I think we all felt the same way when he refused to fight and a whole fight card got canceled. The fans weren't endeared to Jon Jones. There's been a lot of things with Jon in his career. But when he goes up to heavyweight, if he's able to win that belt, you just cannot deny his legacy. I don't give a crap what you say. And I'm not even talking to you, Jeff. I'm talking to the people in the chat right now who are ripping on Jones. There would be no denying his legacy of greatness. But you brought up an excellent point, Jeff. Jon Jones could be in danger of getting starched pretty bad and hurt really bad in that division. But at the same time, looking at him at 250 with his athleticism, with his fight IQ, with the great team at Jackson Wink, I am never, ever going to bet against Jon Jones until someone proves otherwise. I never would.
No, his fight IQ is some of the highest in the sport. And so I give him that, man. I just worry. I mean, particularly that Matt Stipe, I feel like is going to have a speed advantage over Jon Jones. And if Stipe has a speed advantage over Jon Jones has no chance in hell of winning that fight, in my opinion. He's just going to take a 3-punch combination and fall down at some point. Ngannou, I feel like, leaves himself wide open because he overcommits on every punch that he throws, that Jon Jones is going to be able to exploit a lot of situations against Francis. And probably beat Francis, to be honest with you. As long I agree with what you're saying. I think that Jon Jones matches up a lot better with Ngannou than he does with Stipe because Stipe keeps things simple, right? It's jab, jab, clinch, elbows. It's not, and where Ngannou just comes in with these huge flurry punches where if Jones slips one, he's got to be able to take him down, take his back, and do what he wants to with him, I think. So with Ngannou, I think he just has to worry about the big shot. With Stipe, I feel like he has to worry about everything. He has to worry about everything. Look, I don't know Jon Jones. I mean, I've interviewed Jon Jones. Jon Jones is like that child star, right, in MMA. He's the youngest UFC champion, man. He's like that kid from the Partridge Family. And then he went through some bunch of problems, and now he's a respectable adult. Did
you just drop a Bonaducci reference in there?
Yeah, I did.
Like Beavis, Bonaducci.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? He's the youngest to win the championship. He partied. He made some huge mistakes, and now we've got the Jon Jones we've got. Jon Jones wouldn't be who he is today if he didn't go through all of that. Yeah, he's been his own worst enemy. In his career. Let's just say
Jon
that.
Jones is not running from the Polish Hammer, by the way, for all you people who are saying that. He's not running from Blachowicz. He's running toward money fights. Jon Jones has spent a lot of money. He needs more money. Everybody needs more money. You guys, if you listen, I'm going to give you the biggest clue and the biggest hint you'll ever get to how things are done in this sport, every business. Follow the money. Follow the money, follow the money, follow the money, follow the money, follow the money. That's why Jones is going up to heavyweight. Look at the light heavyweight division, Jeff. There's nobody there. Glover Teixeira is the number one contender, for God's sake. There's nobody left at 205. That division's in big trouble. That's why Izzy's going up, because there's nobody that Jan can fight. Look, Blachowicz against anybody else in that division right now is not even a main event on a pay-per-view for the light heavyweight strap. And we're talking about a division where you could arguably say in the history of the UFC, there have been more legends in that division. Tito, Chuck, Machida, Shogun, Rampage, Rashad, Cormier, Jones, on and on and on and on and on. And nobody in that division right now, it is devoid of anyone who sells and who's a big fight for Blachowicz, who's not a big draw in and of himself. Izzy, they had to have Izzy go up. They had to, because there's nobody else there. Jones is not running away from anyone. He's running toward, Jeff, the money.
Yeah. Yeah, he's running. And he's also running towards what might motivate him. Once you've been on top of the 205-pound division and beat everybody, it's hard to get motivated. But you got to go up to heavyweight. You got no choice. And so I think that Jon Jones likes challenges, and we've seen that throughout his career. He drives me crazy. Why are you going to stand out there and strike with Machida? Why do you got to beat Shogun by using Shogun? He becomes the fighter that he's facing and beats them at their own game. And so he's a guy who loves challenges. And so I feel like maybe his move to heavyweight was, maybe I am lacking a little motivation, but if I move up to heavyweight, I'm going to get real motivated real quick because the challenges are interesting to me and they motivate me to get in the gym, put on some weight, make and work hard like I was earlier in my career.
Yeah, he is
I'm
not
excited to see
scared.
him go.
I mean, let
No,
me ask you a
look,
question. For you, anybody who's saying that Jones is afraid of Jan Blachowicz, who would you be more afraid of, Blachowicz or Stipe? Give me a break. Come on. I mean, really.
yeah,
Or Ngannou.
well, but
Who
look,
would you be more
whenever,
afraid of?
yeah, when you're a professional fighter, that's us talking, right? I mean, does Jon Jones scare the hell out of me? Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I don't want to run into any of these people. I don't want to run into the female 115-pound fighter. Uh, so we feel the fear,
Oh.
but they're professional fighters, right? They're professional fighters. This is what Jon Jones does. Jon Jones is not scared of anyone. He's not scared of anyone. I mean, no one, and I mean no one. So, and neither is Jen. Neither are any of these guys. Do they get nervous and butterfly and have self-doubt? 100%. But they aren't scared of anybody, man. This is what they do for a living.
No, that'd be like saying Izzy's going up to light heavyweight because Vittori's coming at him and he's scared of the Whitaker rematch. And 85's got some good fighters. I can't wait to see what Kelvin Gastelum does against Heinisch. I want to see him get back toward the top. You know, you still have in Hermanson, that was a bad loss to Vittori. Vittori is rapidly climbing. You got, Darren Till still in that mix there. Cannonier, Paulo, Whitaker. 85's a pretty stacked division right now. 205's got no one. Heavyweight's got a few guys. Lewis and Blades are fighting coming up in February. You got Stipe, you got Ngannou, and obviously you have Cyril Gane, who's a guy who I'm really high on as an up-and-comer and a rising prospect. Welterweight is stacked. Lightweight's ridiculous. Featherweight's pretty good. But, the one division is light heavyweight. Nobody, Jeff. What the hell happened to this division, man? What? I mean, DC went up to heavyweight, right? Jon Jones is going heavy, but Jones has been in and out. Gustafson's gone. Rumble's gone. Glover keeps finding himself back at the top, and I don't mean to rip on Glover, but for God's sake, when he's your number one contender, you got problems in the division.
Well, it's nice. What happened is Jon Jones ruined a bunch of fighters. I mean, that's what's happened. Jon Jones just took the soul of the entire, the whole 205.
It's a nuclear bomb. It's a mushroom cloud and a fallout. You're right. It is. It's a nuclear bomb and a mushroom cloud fallout of Jon Jones' wreckage. That's what it is. You're right. Great point.
Yeah, I mean that's what's happened. Glover, I do think Glover's a great story, though. But this is Glover's last run, so I kind of like it. I like to see Glover doing what he's doing. But yeah, that's not the guy I thought would be at the top of the division right now. But that's just a testament to Jon Jones, man. I mean, that he killed the entire division, which is why I don't like Izzy going up. The reason why Izzy's going up is because Jon Jones absolutely destroyed everybody. But the reason why Izzy shouldn't go up is he hasn't cleared out even remotely close to the 185-pound division.
No, but Khabib has cleaned out the 55ers, Gaethje and Poirier and McGregor, but they're all still there. The guys who Jon Jones cleaned out are gone. Gustafson's gone, Rumble's gone, DC's gone. They were getting older, and some of that is just the ages of the fighters.
Man.
He ruins careers. And Santos lost to Glover, which was a bad thing to happen for the division there. Anthony Smith had to slide. Dominic Reyes losing to Jan was something nobody thought we'd see. And now Blachowicz is at the top of the division. I really like him, but he's not going to sell a lot. So they need Izzy to win this fight. And I agree, they would want Jones to come back and fight for the 205 belt against Izzy. But he's not coming back to fight for a belt that he already gave up when he never lost it. He is moving on. And if Izzy wants to fight Jon Jones, I would say at least 85% chance it would have to be at heavyweight. I don't think Jones is ever coming back down once he puts that weight on.
No, he's at 250 pounds.
Look at the way he's putting it on. He's putting it on clean and muscle. Yeah, that's not just coming off. It's not fat.
Yeah, no, he's not. He didn't get to be 235 pounds, and be a really light heavyweight. He's at 250 pounds. There's no way he's cutting back down to 205 pounds without catching some disease that causes him to lose half his body mass. He's a heavyweight. Jon Jones is going all in the heavyweight division, and you got to respect that. He's not on the fence about going to the heavyweight. He's 250 pounds shredded Jon Jones going to heavyweight. It's crazy.
Yeah, no doubt. And Izzy, someone says Izzy cleaned out the 85 division. Who the hell is left there to fight? Till, Cannonier, please. Cannonier just lost to Whitaker. I think the Whitaker rematch for sure is the one that everybody wants to see with Izzy at 85. And otherwise, I agree with it. He did beat Whitaker, right? I wouldn't say cleared it out, but he did beat Whitaker, and he made him, not look very good. Whitaker has looked great against everybody not named Adesanya for the longest time. He did beat Yoel. Yoel's gone. He did embarrass Paulo Costa in that fight. Maybe Paulo wasn't ready. Darren Till, in my mind, is not the fight for him. And Vettori is still maybe a win or two away. So to say that Izzy cleaned out the division, he was working on cleaning out the division. Jon Jones cleaned it out. He turned off the lights. He shut off the power. He shut off the water. Jon Jones left a vacant lot in the 205 division.
Yeah, you haven't seen the last person to do what Jon Jones done was probably George St. Pierre at 170, right? He killed everybody. Now people could argue Johnny Hendricks beat him or whatever there at the end. Doesn't matter. I'm talking about his career. When he arrived, when he beat Matt Hughes for the title, he just laid wreckage of the 170 or the 170 division forever. And Jon Jones did it even, he's like, hold my beer, GSP. I'm going to show you up at 205 pounds. Nobody's cleared out a division like that. Not Khabib, no one. I mean, I'm sitting here trying to think back. The heavyweight, there's always turnover, right? So I don't even look at that division. Now, Anderson did clear out. Before Weidman came along, he completely laid wreckage to that division. Yeah. So, Anderson, GSP, and Jon Jones are really the only people that's laid waste to an entire division. I'm just laid waste.
Heavyweight?
No, because it's too. He lost to Cormier that first fight. I don't feel like it yet. And plus, the heavyweight, there's so much turnaround, right? You win two title defenses in a row. You're the greatest heavyweight of all time. That's uniquely for the heavyweight division. That's in no other weight class.
He never fought for Cain. Cain was always hurt.
Yeah, I'd say Aldo cleared out that division before Conor. Before Conor showed up, Aldo did clear out that division. Yep. But that's it. That's really it.
Mighty Mouse.
Yeah, Mighty Mouse did. But that was a new lyric.
Amanda Nunes, the other one.
Amanda Nunes has cleared out a whole gender, man.
A whole gender, yeah. I was going to say she cleared out a whole gender.
I mean, she's like, Amanda Nunes. Enough cannot be said about that woman. Now she scares the crap out of me. I don't, and I like Amanda. Amanda's the nicest person on the planet, but that woman scares me, man. She scares.
She hits hard, bro. And I was watching Wei Lee at open workouts before the Joanna fight, and how hard she was popping those pads right in front of my face. I'm like, holy shoe, man. I do not. That girl. I mean, for 115-pound female. Just stand there and watch her hit the pads. If you ever get the opportunity at the open workouts, we saw it last year in Vegas. It was just mind-numbing to me. Like, holy crap, she's a 115-pound female fighter, and she would absolutely kill me. Meanwhile, Tampa Bay just scored again, Jeff. We're on against the NFC Championship game, but 21-10, the Buccaneers leading the Packers at Lambeau Field, and nothing in the world would make me happier than seeing Aaron Rodgers go home a loser, because I hate Aaron Rodgers. That's another story. But Amanda Nunes versus Jake Paul.
Who's the quarterback?
Clickbaiters
Who's the
in
quarterbacks?
There. Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady. But Aaron Rodgers is a guy I can't stand. Not a guy who likes him.
So Tom Brady is actually making a good run down there. I haven't watched any.
Yeah, he's about to go to another Super Bowl. My buddy's friend is my buddy's father is the head coach of the Buccaneers. Jake Arians. Shout out to Jake. Happy birthday, Jake. BA Bruce Arians is up 21-10. With 1 second left in the second quarter at Lambeau Field. So the Buccaneers looking good. Looking good.
Well, let's throw Tom Brady in there. He's cleared out a division. Tom Brady has definitely cleared out a division.
He's cleared out a whole entire position. But, man, you know what? It's exciting, Jeff, talking about all this stuff, and we still have about a half hour left on the show. The chat's going strong. We haven't done it, Jeff. Are you ready? Drum roll. Roll call. Where are you from, everybody? Where are you watching us from today in the chat? Hit us with it. Last night during the McGregor fight, we had 40,000 people on, and it was unbelievable watching and seeing it just pop up all over the world, every continent, every country, every state in America. And, oh, my God, Ali Khan says Jake Paul beats Conor. Jake Paul did put himself in the news, by the way, today. Did you see that, Jeff? I hate even talking about it, but they are good, Jake and Logan, at putting themselves in the news. So Jake Paul is dropping his financial offering to MMA legend Conor McGregor, and I'm reading story of Yahoo Sports right now. By the way, Yahoo Sports, proud partner and affiliate of MMA Weekly. Thank you very much. For a potential boxing bout after Poirier brutally knocked out McGregor, Paul, a YouTuber turned boxer, had a great laugh out of the ordeal and said across his social media accounts he was cutting his $50 million fight offer to barely nothing comparatively. Now he says he'll give him $10,000.
So Jake Paul is now Conor's not good enough to fight Jake Paul. I mean, is that the world we just landed in? Holy shit. Look, you gotta get those
man, I like
credit.
Kako Kong.
You gotta
I'm from
give those
Texas.
guys
Stay
credit,
out,
man.
Cali hippies. I love it. Joe Rogan goes there, and everybody wants to go now.
Yeah, you got to give those two dudes credit, man. I mean, they're crazier. They're batshit crazy, but that's funny. That's a funny headline. That has to be a joke, right? It's a real headline. I know that he really said it, but surely he had a sense of humor when he was writing that up and giving those statements. Yeah, now that Conor lost, I'm not offering him the big fight against my YouTube celebrity status. Now I'm only going to offer you $2 million. You should tell Conor, you should be paying me. You should be paying me.
And I think it's funny that Jake Paul is making any offer to Conor McGregor, who could buy and sell Jake Paul 10 times.
It's just crazy. It's good comedy, though. I give those guys are actually wearing on me right now. They're actually, I didn't know who they were, but that's comedy gold right there. And I appreciate that because I don't think he's being serious right now. I think he went for a headline, which is what they're best at. And that's funny. That's actually pretty damn funny, Jim. I'm withdrawing my offer to fight Conor McGregor, Jake Paul. That's funny, man. I don't care. That made my day right there.
Jeff, and I want to real quick do something, but then I have a question for you, so don't let me forget. This is UFC 257 Fallout. It's the Roundup Show. Jim Greishaber, Jeff Cain here on MMA Weekly, the most trusted source for news and entertainment in mixed martial arts for almost 20 years. We are powered by CBD Emporium, featuring Level Select CBD. There are levels to this, 3 levels with Level Select, depending upon the dosage that you want. They have the highest concentration of CBD of any product on the market, does Level Select CBD, and they have 0 THC. Now, while some of you might be bummed about the THC part, you could always interject and have your own CBD and make your own little THC cocktail with it. But what I'm saying is, and here's what I'm saying. This is the important part, Jeff. You ready? 50% off right now. CBD Emporium and Level Select products. Go to cbdemporium.com/level select. cbdemporium.com/level select. Enter the code MMA50 for Level Select CBD. Stay in the fight. And my question to you, Jeff Cain, is a 2-part question. 1, is there any attractiveness to you, any sizzle to you, because we're seeing it in the chat, saying Khabib, MMA King says Khabib would never move up weight because he would get destroyed by Usman, Covington, and Burns, which I don't necessarily agree with. How do you think Khabib would do against any of those guys? If there's nobody left to beat Usman, if he cleans out that division, would you like to see Khabib against Kamaru? I know Ali would. He'd make all the money from that fight. But would you like to see that? Or Khabib against Colby? Oh, my God. Can you imagine the talk leading up to it'd be Conor Part 2, Khabib versus Colby or Khabib versus Usman? Does Khabib do well in that division? Would there be a shot that we'd see him there? Or if Khabib says to Dana, the only fight I'm coming back for is Georges St. Pierre, take it or leave it, does Dana take it?
Yes, Dana takes that. 100%.
I think so too.
He takes that. I don't think Khabib will go to 170. I don't think he has any intentions or that even is interesting to him. He's not a big lightweight, and that would be. But I would love to see the Colby Covington fight because I know how it would be like Rocky, right? It'd be like Russia and the United States. Kobe would just be, Kobe running through the snow with logs like he's Sylvester Stallone and stuff. I mean, it'd be the funniest shit. It would be funny promo. I don't think it would happen, but I think that's got some good entertainment value to it. Yeah, I don't know what Khabib's going to do in the long run. Clearly Khabib's going through things. He's got things going on in his life, and then he suffered a big loss, and he's made promises, and he definitely is a person who's probably going to keep those promises. But that doesn't mean that that's forever.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that that's forever. And as he moves away from this, and as you bring up, when you get closer to that age, and we're both past that. But once you get closer to that age where you start feeling the body, right? That shit's about to change. All of a sudden, and you might see Khabib come back out of desperation then trying to recapture that glory one more time. I don't want to see that, though. If Khabib's going to do that, I want him to just come back now, get to 30, and then go.
No, but the weight cuts have been hard on him, man. He's ended up in the hospital with a weight cut before. He could fight at 70. And he does want to fight GSP, so maybe take it or leave it. But Ali Khan, I disagree with you. Khabib doesn't need to go to welterweight. He's done everything. he has not done everything. He never fought Tony Ferguson. He doesn't have that resume of wins like an Anderson Silva or a Jose Aldo or a Jon Jones. He does not have that. He doesn't have a 2-division championship resume. He does not have everything. He has not done everything. I think that's inaccurate.
It is. I mean, I don't think that Khabib's done everything. His resume just doesn't sparkle like the other guys. And like I said, it's because of when he arrived in the UFC. You know, the longtime champions, the veteran, the BJ Penn was gone by the time he got there. And then they didn't really have this strong, longtime champion until Khabib come along, you know, or somebody that had that long undefeated record. It was sort of this changing over period in the 155-pound division when Khabib arrived, and then Conor showed up, and you know, everything's just been crazy since. I think Khabib's done everything. Don't get me wrong on that. But no, his resume doesn't compare to Jon Jones's, and no, his resume doesn't compare to some of these other guys. But he beat the guys in his era that were the top of the sport in his division. And so that, you know, you can't take that away from him. And you know, people say the same thing about like Tyson. Like Tyson's record doesn't have any greats on it, you know, and all this stuff. But you can only beat the guys that are alive and relevant in your lifetime. Khabib's done that. But I will agree that his resume doesn't have the shine that we see some others have.
Yeah, and Khabib has definitely mauled it. I agree with you, Hamza Tahiri. Khabib has mauled everyone, not Ray Janelle, ironically, out of everybody he fought. And I wish we could have seen the Max fight. I think he caught Conor at the right time. I think he's had some of that Mayweather luck, and Floyd created a lot of it himself. He fought Canelo too early, Pacquiao too late. Mayweather's been a master of the timing. And the way that it worked out for Khabib, I always thought Ferguson would be a great matchup for Tony against Khabib. Not now, but, you know, in their heyday when they were going to fight, I actually had Kikuchi as maybe a little bit of a favorite, at least in my mind. And Khabib has hit this legendary status after the Conor fight. And then he chokes out Poirier, and he literally dominated Justin Gaethje. I'm not arguing Khabib's dominance. There's no way I'd be a fool. But I don't think he's accomplished everything. I think 30 is a big number. To go 30-0, I mean, think about it. Obviously, I'm sitting here, it goes a lot better than 29-0. To retire undefeated is huge, but to get that 30, to get that fight, and to beat, I mean, I don't think the GSP win would do anything for his legacy right now, although credit to George to go up to 85 and beat Bisping after those years off, to come back and fight Khabib and beat him after those years off would be incredible. But for Khabib's legacy, the 30 matters more than a win over GSP, and there's nobody left right now, unfortunately. If there were that one guy out there, Jeff, let's say Tony Ferguson had fought Khabib, and it would be for his 30th win. Let's say it had worked out that way and Ferguson had not lost to Gaethje. Let's say Ferguson had not lost to Oliveira. Then, yeah, I would say fight Ferguson now for sure. Yeah. But if that had been the case, let's say Ferguson had beaten Gaethje and then fallen off the card, and then Chandler would have fought Khabib, whatever, and then Tony would have never fought Khabib. But there isn't that fight out there anywhere that would compel you to fight if you're Khabib, because he's beaten everybody there minus Michael Chandler and Oliveira. And those two guys aren't exciting to him, and they don't do anything for him. I would like to see Khabib versus Chandler. I would love to see Khabib versus Michael Chandler. Of anyone Khabib could fight right now, that would be the fight I'd want to see the most. But I just don't think they're going to get him out of retirement for that fight. Maybe. I could be wrong. You want to talk about USA, Russia? You talked about it with Colby and Khabib. Chandler's always got the American flag, American wrestling versus Russian Sambo. I think it'd be awesome. But I just don't know if we're going to see it.
No, I think Khabib's mind's made up right now. I think that what we got to really kind of hope for, I don't think any fighter is going to draw Khabib out of retirement. I think what we can hope for is that his competitive spirit, the further he gets away from being in the octagon, will kick in, and he'll say, I want to do this. Yes, he made a promise to his mom, but look, man, that's his mom. I mean, I've made promises to my mom that I had to go back and be like, look, hey, Mom, I kind of
I meant it at the time, Mom.
Yeah, you know, can I get that one back? And moms always give it back, right? So I mean, this isn't, I don't feel like it's set in stone that we're never going to see Khabib fight again. I don't think we're going to see him fight for the at least the next 6 to 8 months. And so you have to strip him from the belt. And we may never see him again. But like I said, he's one of those guys that's young. Life changes. You never know. He might want to come back. You know what's crazy? We might see him fighting in his own promotion. Conor might have to go fight Khabib in Khabib's own promotion. Just think about that. So we might not be done seeing Khabib, but we could be done seeing Khabib in the UFC.
Yeah,
I don't know what his contract was like. How many fights was left on his contract? If there's a time stamp to his contract, does it run out? These things play out in court, man. But I don't know what his contract was. If he's fought out his contract, then I would say you're probably going to see Khabib maybe if he fights again in his own promotion.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I want to take this back full circle, Jeff, and we got about 15, 20 minutes left on the show. We'll be here every Sunday with the wrap-up show, turning it into what is essentially just an all-around UFC/MMA show. And, the fallout from those fights last night, as you look through the division, we both agree that the fight to make next would be, from the standpoint of the division and the belt and the title, if Khabib's out, then the fight would be Poirier-McGregor 3. Because Gaethje and Oliveira and Chandler and all those guys don't really have a legitimate claim to a title shot against Poirier right now. And you could argue against every single one of them. There's no clear cut. Chandler's only had one fight, and it was against Dan Hooker. And how good is Hooker, really? Because when Poirier fought Hooker, again, a little bit of a matchup issue there, but Poirier was coming off the hip surgery, and it definitely affected him in that fight. So you have Gaethje, who's already lost to Poirier. You have Oliveira, who needs a win over a top contender to get to that point. And again, I don't consider Tony Ferguson to be that guy right now. There's no clear-cut fight for that belt. So we said earlier in the show, and just to bring it back full circle, we want to see Conor and Poirier 3 for the belt with the co-main of Gaethje versus Chandler. And then the winner of that fight faces the winner of Conor and Poirier in that next fight.
Yeah. That's what I think.
That was what we came up with, right? That's where we're at.
Yeah, that's what I think is going to happen as well. Yeah. Yep, I think that's what's going to happen. They're going to do Conor Poirier 3. But see, you have a harder time making it for the belt right now. That's why I said I wish this was for the belt, because Conor is coming off of a loss, and so now it's for the title. Conor Poirier 3's for a title, but Conor Poirier 2 wasn't. It just doesn't make any sense. That should have. I really feel like they dropped the ball on that one, Jim. Sorry, I keep going back to. I feel like they dropped the ball, and then plus the best way to entice Khabib to come back is somebody else winning his belt, right?
Yeah, Marcus Williams said that in the chat too. They should have stripped Khabib and made that fight for the title last night. And in retrospect, they probably should have. You said it earlier, but you're right. They should have.
Yeah. Because now they can't make the trilogy for the title. They can't.
And why did you strip? You stripped Henry. You said it. They stripped Henry right away. Instantly stripped Henry.
Yeah. Well, they've stripped other people instantly. I like the biggest fight in UFC history is what happened. That's what happened. If Conor delivered, you had Conor and Khabib for the belt in a rematch, and if in the biggest fight in UFC history, and so they wanted to keep that intact. But in trying to keep that intact, that's not there now, and now we can't have a title fight in the next fight between the two because we didn't make this with a title fight. Like I said, I think that they dropped the ball, and they've never. This is so rare for the UFC to do to have a misstep, right? It's like they didn't calculate. They didn't calculate. It's almost like they thought Conor was going to win. That's what it's almost like. Poirier threw a monkey wrench in that, and now the division's kind of up in the air because look. Khabib should just walk over and hand Poirier his belt. Say, you're the champion. And then it's
all right, well, I'm gonna ask you this one, Jeff. This is out of the chat, too. Fighting King wants to know, why would Conor fight for the belt next after getting knocked out? That makes no sense. He's Conor. Doesn't have to. Right?
I agree. It makes no sense because last night wasn't for a title fight. That's why that doesn't make sense. If last night was for a title, people get knocked out in title fights and get rematches all the time. Anderson Silva, Chris White, he broke his leg. No, he got knocked out. Then he broke his leg. You get rematches. Benavidez, Figueiredo, you lose, and then you can state claim by saying, this went wrong or that went wrong or, this would have changed. We need to settle it. And so we do the trilogy. The only reason why the third fight doesn't make sense for a title is because the UFC opted not to make the second one for a title.
No, and Muhammad Usman wants to know, where does Kevin Lee fit in all this? He's ranked 11. I mean, no disrespect. He looked great against Gillespie, but I mean, he was dominated by Oliveira, who's now at number 3, but Kevin Lee ranked all the way down at 11. He doesn't factor in. Rafael dos Anjos, though, Jeff, wants to make another run at the belt. I mean, RDA is right there at number 7. Paul Felder's coming off the loss to RDA. RDA is going to leapfrog Hooker. I love your idea of having RDA fight Ferguson, though the loser is gone forever from title contention. And then Conor McGregor's there, Oliveira's there, Poirier and Gaethje, and then Michael Chandler's going to be there. So looking at the rankings, Chandler, Oliveira, Gaethje, and Poirier, along with Conor McGregor, those are 5 big-time fighters, any of whom could be the champ in that division. And I don't think RDA could win it again. But I do believe any of those 5 could end up winning it. They start eliminating one another. So we could argue all day long about who should fight who and who the winner should get and the loser should get and all those things. But we both agree that we want to see the trilogy, Conor and Poirier. We really want to see Gaethje fight Chandler. I would love to see Chandler fight Khabib right now for the belt and have that be Khabib's 30th. I would love it. But then Khabib wins, you burn Chandler. Or maybe not, because just because you lose to Khabib, Poirier, Gaethje, that doesn't mean that you're not a title contender anymore. So of all the fights that Khabib would be enticed by right now, if it's not Oliveira, it's got to be Chandler. He's already beaten the other guys. It's got to be, if you're going to get Khabib back this year, it would have to be for Oliveira or Chandler. And I believe that Chandler would be that guy. He's a champion from another promotion. It's got the whole USA Russia thing. The wrestling is great from Michael Chandler. And I really think Khabib would like that matchup. And to me, I would not be surprised if you see Khabib take the Chandler fight out of anyone.
I mean, that's a dangerous fight. Really dangerous fight. You know, I think Khabib is going to have the same mentality that Poirier has. That, you know, Chandler just got one fight in the UFC, you know, and that other people, like I honestly think if you ask Khabib and we had him down in front of us today, who deserves the title fight more, Michael Chandler or Charles Oliveira, I think we all might be surprised at his answer. But it's only because Chandler's only fought one time in the UFC. That's it. That's the only reason why. And so let's forget that he's only fought one time in the UFC. Let's consider those Bellator fights because look, he's fighting for titles in Bellator. He's not fighting on the undercard. He's fighting. Yeah, he is fighting the best that Bellator has to offer, which may not be what the best the UFC has to offer, but it's not that far down to where we can't say, man, those are impressive wins. Benson Henderson's, that's an impressive win. Eddie Alvarez, that's an impressive win. So if we just get away from looking at Chandler as you got one UFC fight, then it starts to make sense for him to have a title fight. You know, whenever you look at his resume as a whole, but we're only looking at it as like he's a spring chicken just born last night when he showed up on a UFC card. He's not. He's a 3-time former Bellator champion who's got big wins over some big names. And then he made his UFC debut, delivered. I mean, delivered like nobody's ever delivered probably in their debut. And so I'm not saying that Chandler doesn't deserve it, but a lot of people I think are going to say that. And Khabib might even be one of those people. You hear Poirier say that. Everybody ranked at the top's going to say that, right? That's their argument. Chandler shouldn't get it. He's only had one fight here. I should get it. So you're going to probably hear all of them say that.
All of them say that. And if Chandler does become the UFC champ, I know that Patricio Pitbull has several fights and years left on his Bellator contract as the guy who just beat him last year and knocked him out in the first round. And I know that everyone would love to see that fight in the UFC if Patricio Pitbull would come over and fight Michael Chandler for the UFC belt, which would be really interesting. But other than that, there are so many matchups that are intriguing and compelling. And Jeff, we got about 10 minutes left. Muhammad Usman in the chat asked us if we could shed some light on the welterweight division. So what do you think? I mean, I want to kind of shift gears a little bit and answer that question because we appreciate you in the chat. The welterweight division, I'll go first. The way I see the welterweight division shaking out, and this is assuming, of course, that Burns fights Usman. I'm not saying this is an easy fight for Kamaru. Gilbert Burns, the striking with Henry Hooft, world-class jiu-jitsu. Kamaru's threat of the takedowns is not going to be there like it normally is. He's going to have to think twice about it before going to the ground. On the feet, he's phenomenal. Assuming Kamaru wins that fight, and that's a big assumption. That's a great fight. You'd have to say Covington gets the rematch next, right? And then after that, you got Masvidal, you got Wonderboy, you got Leon Edwards, who's got a big fight coming up against Khamzat Chimaev, a huge opportunity for Chimaev to go all the way toward the top of the rankings by fighting number 3 Edwards. but it's got to be and I saw today that they're working on a Tyron Woodley-Vicente Luque fight, which, oh my God, that'd be great. But Woodley would finally fight someone besides the top 3 guys, and then we'll see where he really is as a fighter at this point in his career. But you got to figure, no matter what happens in February at UFC 258, Covington has to get the winner, right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, outside of an injury or outside of something crazy, if everything goes smoothly, Kobe's going to get that. Yeah, man, I'm just now looking. I just pulled up the rankings because I haven't been thinking. It was a lightweight weekend. I wasn't even considering welterweights.
There's Ali Khan real quick on the screen, Jeff. He's the ultimate Khabib fan, right? He's messaging everything in capital letters, and everything is Khabib. But that's pretty funny. Colby is retired after election. What you talking about? Go ahead, Jeff. Sorry, I just wanted to read that message there on the screen.
No, we're all right. Like I said, I hadn't really been thinking about the welterweight division because I was focused on this last event, and I'm looking at it. It's an interesting thing. Yeah, Kobe's going to get the next title fight, I would think, and then we don't know what's going to happen to Masvidal really. And then Thompson is on the rise. That's a guy who does have a fan base, who does have a following, who is a household name, and so I like Stephen Thompson's run towards the top. But yeah, Kobe's probably going to get the winner of the title fight. I would think, right?
Has to.
Yeah, I mean, unless I'm just missing something.
Unless he fights Masvidal, but there's no way. Why would you ever take the Masvidal fight when you're the first in line for a title shot? It's because Colby's number 1, Burns is number 2, Edwards, Masvidal, Wonderboy, Woodley, Maia, Chiesa, Magny, who just lost to Chiesa, but I mean, look, we can stop after Wonderboy, really. Colby, Burns, Edwards, Masvidal, Wonderboy, and then maybe the wild card of Khamzat. If Khamzat beats Edwards, he's a top 5 fighter.
Yes. Yeah, and look, Kobe and Masvidal is sort of like Conor Diaz, right? That fight's going to be interesting no matter when. They hate each other. Former training partners, former roommates, and all this stuff. Look, that fight could happen at any point down the line. That's not what Kobe's interested in now, unless he sees some pay-per-view buy rate that I'm not seeing. Kobe's going to get the next title fight, and then Masvidal looks like I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen to him. I think that Steven, off of his last win, is almost like more viable than Masvidal in a way. But I don't know. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of interesting thing. And then Woodley's got so much to prove, and not to mention his age. Yeah. He's done. Magny just lost. Chiesa's going to jump up a little bit. Yeah, you're right. We don't even need to talk about after Stephen Thompson. It just comes down to that title fight. It just comes down to how that title fight
Masvidal. What?
It's just going to come down to the title fight and how that works out. How that works out. Because look, if it's a split decision or a crazy war, then that's probably a rematch, right? And so,
well, no, and think about it this way too, Jeff. Those 3 guys could tie up that division for 2 years if you think about it. Because let's say Burns beats Kamaru, and then Colby fights Burns and beats Burns, then you have the rematch, Colby and Usman, and let's not rule out the fact that Usman and Burns could have an all-time classic with Burns getting the win, and then Usman gets an immediate rematch. So those 3 guys could theoretically tie up that division for at least a year and a half, maybe even 2 years.
Oh, yeah. And that's not even including potential rematches. Like I said, with draws or something weird happen, an injury or a DQ or whatever. They could tie up the division for a while. But the key is the title fight. The key is the title fight. And then we'll know what the rest is going to happen in that division. But yeah, I wouldn't look at past Wonderboy right there. Wonderboy's on the rise. Everybody below him, that's a long walk to the title. I mean, it could be years. Everybody in the top 5 is viable. I mean, where does Masvidal go though right now? If he's not going to be fighting Kobe, what does he do?
People talk about him versus Conor for the BMF. That would be for a while. But you think about it for 1 second, Jeff. When you're talking about this division, it is definitely Kamaru, Colby, and Burns, and then everybody else. And I mean, I know Khamzat's on the rise, and Edwards with a big win over him would maybe fight a Masvidal. But I want to know from you what you think, because it could be 55, it could be 70. Where does Nate Diaz fit if he wants to fight this year? Who do you bring Diaz in to fight? And he's going to be chirping, he's going to be out there somewhere, and he might even hop back in the octagon. Where would he fit into all this at 55 or 70?
What was interesting is during the post-fight press conference last night, Poirier said he wants to fight Nate Diaz. And so
Yeah,
if
that
the
would be
belt is not
awesome.
on the, so the belt's not on the line, right? Because we didn't crown a champion. And so this is a way it could work out. Nate Diaz could get that fight on name recognition. You know, it's not for a belt. Poirier's not the champion. So there you go. There's a fight. And then let's just say for some crazy reason, I wouldn't think it's going to happen, but Diaz wins. Then there you go. You've got Diaz and Conor 3 with Diaz coming off a win over Poirier. You know, there's a ton of ways to work this. Or you give Poirier that fight and then Conor take another one. And then and then let's say Poirier and Conor wins, then their rematch can be a title fight. Not having last night for a title fight's really kind of thrown a monkey wrench in how they have to do this. It really has. It really has.
Poirier's got to have the belt. I would. Yep.
And so Nate Diaz could actually be a weird factor in this. He could actually, because Poirier wants to fight him. There's always that trilogy with Conor, and so it could be a way to split this away from what happened last night.
BMF rematch with Jorge.
Well, I would say just let Diaz fight Poirier right now for a non-title fight, and then give Conor RDA or something, and then you can do a rematch and have it for the belt with Poirier and Conor, if they all work out. But the rematch with Jorge is always good for Diaz. That might be his biggest fight. Conor, the trilogy with Conor is his biggest fight, and then I think the rematch with Masvidal is the second biggest fight, and Poirier is probably the third.
It'd be interesting. I want to see both Diaz brothers fight this year. I'm not giving up on Nick either. I'm not giving up on Nick or Nate, and big draws, both those guys, Jeff. I don't know, but this is fascinating, man. Again, it boils down to, for me, the fight I want to see the most, other than, Khabib coming back against Chandler. I'd love to see that. I want to see Gaethje Chandler as the co-main on a Conor Poirier trilogy fight for the belt. And people say Conor just got knocked out. How does he fight for the belt? Dana does not like those types of fights. He would probably want Conor to win one in between. He's going to push for Poirier versus Chandler, which I think would be a great fight. And that's the fight to make if you're Dana for the belt right now, would be Poirier and Chandler. But Poirier already said he'd rather make hot sauce than take that fight. So we'll see if they can incentivize him to do it. So based on right now, Jeff, odds-wise, you still think Conor Poirier 3 is the one we're going to see next, not Poirier Chandler, right? Or Khabib Chandler. If you were betting on one of them, it's definitely the trilogy, right?
Yes. I just don't know how the UFC is going to swindle this to where it's going to be a title fight. I really don't. I don't know how. And so that's the weird thing for me, is how they're going to do it. Maybe they don't. Maybe they just do the trilogy and settle it. But I feel like we have to crown a new champion. We can't crown a new champion between Poirier and Conor 3. We can't. So now the championship now Khabib really is kind of holding up the division and everything. And so I don't know. I don't. That's the fight. That's the biggest fight the UFC can make. That's the biggest fight they can make as far as sellability and marketing and everything. That's the fight that they make. And I think they make Chandler and Gaethje. I just don't know how they're going to reintroduce the belt. That's the weird thing for me. Maybe you call Vince McMahon and say, hey, did we do a steel chair match? Did we pull up in a limo and just throw it out? I don't know how they're going to reintroduce the belt into that division now because they didn't strip Khabib.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, what a show this has been today. We'll be back next Sunday, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific. There's no fights next week, but we'll be on with the show. We're going to keep it here and consistent for you every Sunday. It's a wrap-up show. It's a podcast show talking about the UFC and MMA in general. But, Jeff, what a great week it's been for us. So many views, so much content. I'm exhausted. I'm ready to go watch some football and chill and just get ready for another big week here at MMA Weekly. Just want to get a final thought from you before we wrap it up, my man, because I've really enjoyed every second of every show with you.
Man, I mean, it was a good fight week. Three fight cards in 8 days, man. I mean, we kicked it off with Max Holloway, and then we kind of skipped right over that Wednesday event. We covered it, but I don't remember any of it now. Hardly, it's just kind of funny because we just had Poirier knock out Conor McGregor to kind of end this crazy run in Abu Dhabi. It's been a fun ride. Surprises, right? I mean, it's just so I didn't expect Poirier to knock out McGregor. I didn't expect Holloway to look as good as he did. I mean, that's probably the best he's ever looked in that fight.
Yep.
We've seen a lot of things happen in these first 3 events of the year, including a crazy person get cut from the UFC who's undefeated. And we still don't know what's in the bag, Jim. We still don't know what's in the bag.
Dana doesn't know what was in the bag, or at least he's not saying.
Yeah, so it's been a good fun ride. What a way to kick off 2021. I'll say that, man. This is a fun way to kick off 2021, and we have stacked fight cards all the way through March.
All over 2 million views now for our live stream last night. Thank you so much for being here, guys. Thank you for all the contributions in the chat. We love you. We're here for you, and we will be here nonstop throughout 2021. Weigh-in shows, post-fight press conference shows, our weekly wrap-up show, our streams during the fights. Man, unbelievable right here on MMA Weekly. I'm proud to be a part of this team. Ken Pishna and the crew on the website, MMAWeekly.com. Jeff, Hunter Brownstein, all the writers doing a phenomenal job. Jake Hatton, check out his wrap-ups and recaps right here on YouTube from the fight last night. Check that out, as well as all of our upcoming content. I want to say thank you to our great friends and sponsors at CBD Emporium, featuring Level Select CBD. Our show is brought to you by them, a big-time factor in this coverage that we've been able to provide for you. You're going to get 50% off right now any products of CBD Emporium or Level Select CBD on the CBD Emporium website. Here's how it works. CBDemporium.com/Level Select CBD. CBDemporium.com/Level Select CBD. Enter the code MMA50 that you see on your screen. MMA50 to get that 50% discount right now. For Jeff Cain, for all of us at MMA Weekly, really proud of our team and the coverage we've done this week. I'm Jim Greishaber. Call me Grease. Thank you for being here and being with us at MMA Weekly, the most trusted source of news and entertainment in mixed martial arts for almost 20 years. You got nowhere else to be but right here, baby. Enjoy your Sunday. Thank you.